Chapter 1379. Yi Chen faintly nodded. Comprehending the time profound indeed required aptitude. The majority of Supremes only comprehended 20 to 30% of the time profound. It was not that they didn't want to improve it, but they were truly limited by their aptitude. Even if they were given the word of time, they would only be able to improve 10 to 20% at most. Ying Liexiong continued, "As for what you said, I know a thing or two. If I'm not wrong, you don't have enough experience and can't handle the time profound." Don't have enough experience and can't handle the time profound? Yi Chen thought about it and didn't understand. Let me put it this way. Do you feel that your lifespan has greatly increased and is close to the limit of legendary Supremes? Yes. Yi Chen answered. That's right. Comprehending time profound is different from comprehending other profounds. It brings great changes to the body, especially to lifespan. Therefore, you need to get used to the time profound at this stage. Only after you get used to it can you continue comprehending time profound. It's like a person who suddenly has 100 times more power. If you can't control it, you'll be tired. Ying Liexiong explained. I see. Yi Chen finally understood. He had comprehended time profound to the great completion realm in such a short time. It was too fast. His perception of time and the universe's time were already a little out of sync. Not to mention that he couldn't continue comprehending time profound, even if he forcefully comprehended it to the great completion realm, it would probably cause a series of backlashes, such as a chaotic sense of time. A chaotic sense of time was an extremely terrifying thing. In a battle, a single moment could be fatal. After understanding the reason why time profound couldn't be improved, Yi Chen no longer hesitated. He started to create the third move of the space-time sword art. Although the first two moves had been perfected and there was nothing that could be changed, in Yi Chen's opinion, these two moves weren't enough to display the power of time profound. Less than 1,000 miles away from the place where Yi Chen and the Iron Star Snake had fought, a ripple spread out. It was like a calm lake suddenly being blown by the wind. The next moment, two black dots appeared from the ripple and became bigger and bigger. Finally, they turned into two figures. One was wearing a black robe and the other was wearing a grey robe. They looked extremely miserable, as if they had been chased by something. Their faces were red and their clothes were tattered. Damned Gemini Tyrannosaurus, why did I encounter it? The black-robed old man's face was gloomy. The desolate god's secret realm is incomparably terrifying. It's already not easy for us to come out alive. It's a pity that we didn't find the transmission array. The grey-robed elder reached out and wiped his tattered grey clothes. Teleportation array? TMPH, I suspect that the desolate god's secret realm doesn't even have a teleportation array. Do you think that those 5 fellows are lying to us? They can't wait for us to leave, causing us to be trapped in the desolate god's secret realm for hundreds of thousands of years. Our starry sky bear dog kings also died in the desolate god's secret realm. Without them, our restrictions on those 5 fellows would be much weaker, the black-robed elder said suspiciously. The grey-robed elder's face turned cold. I hope they didn't lie to us. Last time, we were able to destroy 2 rank 8 tribes. This time, we can do it again. I haven't been out for more than 100,000 years. I wonder if the Wild's God continent has changed. The black-robed old man's eyes were filled with killing intent. The two of them did not travel together. Instead, they went their separate ways. The black-robed elder flew towards the Yunzhong tribe, while the grey-robed elder flew towards the Xinghai tribe. In the Yunzhong tribe, Yun Piaomiao was drinking tea in the pavilion. Opposite him sat his daughter and son-in-law. They had been married for tens of thousands of years. He did not know when they would give birth to a grandson. Looking at the courtyard where the first demon venerable was, Yun Piaomiao sighed. It would be great if his descendants were half as outstanding as the first demon venerable. Suddenly, Yun Piaomiao's expression changed. His daughter and son-in-law had never seen Yun Piaomiao with such an expression. They saw fear and dread on his face. Father, what happened? Yun Piaomiao's daughter could not help but ask. I didn't expect them to not be able to leave the Wild's God continent. Instead, they came out of the desolate god's secret realm, Yun Piaomiao muttered to himself as if he did not hear his daughter's question. Yun Piaomiao, there are too many things that you didn't expect. A black-robed elder appeared outside the Yunzhong tribe's array. His gaze could actually penetrate the layers of array and see Yun Piaomiao's mouth. Yun Piaomiao hesitated for a moment. He waved his hand and the array opened, allowing the black-robed elder to enter. I haven't seen you for hundreds of thousands of years. At least you haven't lost your head yet. The black-robed elder's figure flashed and appeared in the pavilion. He looked at Yun Piaomiao's daughter and son-in-law. This should be your daughter. She looks pretty good. I remember that when I left, you didn't even have a child. Welcome, supremacy. Yun Piaomiao's next action made his daughter and son-in-law turn pale with fright. Who was it that the leader had to welcome? Wasn't the Wild's God continent controlled by the leaders of the 5 major tribes? Hurry up and welcome the supremacy. Yun Piaomiao quickly gave the two of them a look. Welcome, supremacy. Although the two of them did not know when a supremacy had appeared in the Yunzhong tribe, how could they not know that the black-robed elder's status was even higher than Yun Piaomiao's when they saw Yun Piaomiao's expression? I have something to say to the supremacy. The two of you can leave first. Yun Piaomiao ordered his daughter and son-in-law to leave. Yes. The two of them did not dare to stay any longer and quickly left the pavilion. Supremacy, please have some tea. Yun Piaomiao poured a cup of tea for the black-robed elder. The black-robed elder picked up the cup and drank it in one gulp. Yun Piaomiao, I haven't seen you for hundreds of thousands of years, but your aura has become much stronger. Let me ask you. Suddenly, a strange expression flashed across the black-robed elder's face. Shua, his figure disappeared. When he reappeared, he was in the courtyard of the first demon venerable. Who is it? The first demon venerable walked out of the room. When he saw the black-robed elder, the first demon venerable's expression changed slightly. He could feel the surging demonic power from the other's body. That kind of aura was much stronger than that of the leaders of the 5 major tribes. The aura of darkness. The black-robed elder's eyes lit up like light bulbs. That's right. Only the bloodline of the great demons can have the aura of darkness. It is so dense. Haha, I am Sea Demon Venerable, and I come from the Demon's God continent. When did you come to the Wild's God continent? Did you come here through the mark I left behind? Yes. Even when facing Empyrean Sea Fiend, who was much stronger than him, the first Demon Lord still maintained the same appearance. His bloodline was supreme, and in the demon race, he was the future ruler. He didn't need to bow down, even when facing Empyrean Sea Fiend. Sea Demon Venerable frowned slightly, but he soon relaxed. The bloodline of the great demons was indeed like this. If it were any other demon genius, he would have already taught them a lesson. Chapter 1380. With his time profound reaching greater completion, Yi Chen's spacetime sword arts had thoroughly surpassed 5 elements sword arts, yin-yang sword arts, and 4 symbols sword arts. Moreover, it wasn't just by a little bit. It was already not inferior to supreme sword arts. If he could truly create the third style, his battle power would make a huge leap. The third move's concept was simple. It was black hole. Although Super Supremes could create small black holes, compared to those crude black holes, Yi Chen's was much more difficult. After all, Yi Chen had the support of spacetime ultimacy. How could he not make use of this advantage? On the prairie, Yi Chen and Ying Liexiong were in an intense battle. Ying Liexiong didn't use Skyblast Hammer, and Yi Chen didn't use Sky Sword either. The two of them fought with ordinary supreme weapons. It could be seen that even if Ying Liexiong wasn't serious, he still had the upper hand. The domineering hammer technique looked simple and direct, but it was able to defeat Yi Chen's sword technique every time, causing Yi Chen to be shaken. This is a newly created spacetime sword technique, Black Hole Stance. Yi Chen executed the embryonic third move of spacetime sword technique, Black Hole Stance. The supreme sword trembled, and 3 black dots appeared in front of Yi Chen. The 3 black dots looked tiny, but they emitted a shocking gravitational force. They enveloped Ying Liexiong in a triangular formation. They weren't fast or slow, as they contained spacetime ultimacy. Good move. The three gravitational forces stacked together, causing Ying Liexiong to be unable to swing his hammer. The desolation essence in his body was like a raging flood that was about to be released. Rumble. After forcefully defeating the three black dots, Ying Liexiong flew out in a pathetic manner. As expected of the space-time sword technique, I nearly suffered. Ying Liexiong decided that the next time he saw Yi Chen execute this move, he had to use 10 times his strength, or he wouldn't be able to suppress this move. Are you saying that the bloodline of the great demon king has appeared? And there's also a peerless genius of the human race? In the Star Ocean tribe, the grey-robed old man looked at Evil Star in shock. Evil Star nodded heavily. The great demon king's bloodline is more terrifying than I imagined. In time, he will definitely become a demigod and rule the world. The only one who can contend against him is that peerless genius of the human race. Therefore, I feel that the evil spirit race has no need to help the demons. Let them deal with the peerless genius of the human race themselves. Although Evil Star had submitted to the first demon Venerable, it didn't mean that he didn't have other thoughts. In his opinion, it wasn't a good thing to be the sole ruler. If the first demon Venerable continued to grow like this, no one would be able to stop him. At that time, let alone the Human Race Alliance, even the Demons Alliance would become slaves of the demons. At most, they would be slaves of a slightly higher level. Therefore, he felt that Yi Chen's existence was very necessary. After all, this was different from the past. In the past, such a terrifying figure had never appeared. The war between the Demons Alliance and the Human Race Alliance would last forever, so the evil spirit race naturally didn't need to worry about destroying the Human Race Alliance. What you said makes sense, but we still have to put on a show. Otherwise, we won't be able to explain to Heavenly Venerable Sea Fiend. The grey-robed old man was the legendary supremacy of the evil spirit race, Heavenly Venerable Evil Light. His strength was comparable to Heavenly Venerable Sea Fiend's. Although he wasn't afraid of Heavenly Venerable Sea Fiend, he didn't want to fall out with the demons. That wouldn't be a good thing for the evil spirit race. Moreover, he and Heavenly Venerable Sea Fiend both suspected that a supremacy of the Human Race Alliance had also come to the Wild's God continent. He didn't know if they had left, but he had to be on guard. By the way, Heavenly Venerable Evil Light, how did you come to the Wild's God continent? Heavenly Venerable Evil Light was a legendary supremacy. If he hadn't come to the Wild's God continent, the evil spirit race would have dominated the universe. As if he could read Evil Star's thoughts, Heavenly Venerable Evil Light shook his head and said, "Things are more complicated than you think. Heavenly Venerable Sea Fiend and I came to the Wild's God continent a long time ago. As for why we came here, you will find out in the future. All these years, we have been looking for a way to leave the Wild's God continent, but unfortunately, we haven't been able to. The Wild's God mystic realm is too dangerous for us, and it's also a little too strange." You can leave the Wild's God mystic realm? It wasn't that Evil Star hadn't thought of leaving, but he couldn't stay in the Wild's God continent forever. There is only one way for the desolate race to leave the Wild's God continent, and that is to pass through the Wild's God Tower. There are two ways for us outsiders to leave the Wild's God continent. One is to pass through the Wild's God Tower, and the other is to leave through the teleportation array in the Wild's God mystic realm. The first method is too ridiculous, and even if we can pass it, we don't know where we will end up. The Wild's God left the Wild's God Tower behind not just to let the desolate race leave the Wild's God continent, so there is only the second method. Have you found the teleportation array? Evil Star asked. Empyrean Evil Light's face sank. In the Wild's God mystic realm, fierce beasts run rampant. Even with my and Empyrean Sea Fiend's strength, we still have to be careful. It's still unknown if there is a teleportation array or not. 1, 2, 5 black dots appeared, and a large amount of soil was suddenly pulled up. Under the combined effect of the 5 black dots, the soil turned into powder in the air, and then turned into 5 streams that were sucked into the black dots. Compared to the last time he sparred with Ying Liexiong, Yi Chen's black hole stance was even stronger. The number of black holes had increased from 3 to 5, and they maintained an absolute balance without destroying each other. The third stance, black hole stance, is complete. Slowly letting out a breath of turbid air, Yi Chen's eyes returned to normal. Previously, his eyes were like black holes, and this was a change brought about by using the black hole stance. This black hole stance isn't considered weak among the supreme martial arts. Now, the difference between me and the leaders of the 5 tribes is only the difference in martial Dao Yuan soul. Some silver martial Dao Yuan souls were strong, and some were weak. Yi Chen was only at the early silver stage. The first demon venerable, Evil Star, Kang Xueli, and War Bear were also at this level. Achem. Yi Chen abruptly looked toward the west. He could feel a powerful demonic power pervading the air. If it isn't the first demon venerable, who is it? Due to the distance, Yi Chen couldn't see the other party. Found him. Empyrean Sea Fiend discovered Yi Chen. His figure flashed, and his speed soared. After a few flashes, he was less than 1,000 miles away from Yi Chen. Yi Chen stood there quietly, and Heaven Splitter, who was next to him, had his hair stand on end. Swish. A black light flashed, and Empyrean Sea Fiend landed on the grassland opposite Yi Chen. "You are Sword Venerable Yi Chen?" Empyrean Sea Fiend asked. "Yes, and who are you?" Yi Chen's eyes narrowed slightly. He could feel the killing intent from the other party. The reason he stayed here and didn't run away was because he was very confident in his space-time profound meaning. As long as he wanted to run, unless the other party was a quasi-demigod, there was absolutely no way they could catch up to him. "I'll give you 2 choices. One is to obediently surrender, and the other is to be killed by me." Empyrean Sea Fiend sized up Yi Chen and said indifferently, "I don't choose either. Heaven Splitter, let's go." Jumping onto Heaven Splitter's back, Yi Chen waved his hand. Space-time instantly distorted, wrapping around Heaven Splitter and disappearing without a trace. When they reappeared, they were already 1,000 miles away. Large success in space-time profound meaning? Empyrean Sea Fiend's face was extremely gloomy. Whoosh, almost the moment Yi Chen and Heaven Splitter disappeared, he chased after them. His aura had already locked onto Yi Chen. Chapter 1381. The 2 chased, one fleeing, and soon, they were 100,000 miles away. A peerless genius of the human race only knows how to run. Empyrean Sea Fiend couldn't help but mock as he saw Yi Chen's figure getting further and further away. "If I were a quasi-demigod, you would be the one running." Empyrean Sea Fiend was very strong, stronger than the 5 great tribe leaders. Yi Chen only felt a dangerous aura similar to Empyrean Sea Fiend's from the gold-eating beast. It was clear that even if Empyrean Sea Fiend wasn't as strong as the gold-eating beast, he was at least an existence close to it. The gold-eating beast was a peak legend rank supreme, and even the 5 great tribe leaders could only contend with it. "You're very stubborn. Let's see if you can keep being so stubborn when I catch you." Empyrean Sea Fiend released his Sea Fiend domain while chasing Yi Chen. The Sea Fiend domain was vast and mighty, sweeping towards Yi Chen like a vast sea. Within the domain, there were even countless Empyrean Sea Fiend phantoms faintly visible. Sea Fiend domain, 9th domain. Yi Chen's scalp went numb. He felt that once he was enveloped by the other party's domain, there would be no way out. The 9th domain wasn't an ordinary domain. This level of domain could even kill a low-level legend rank supreme. Although a mid-level legend rank supreme and a high-level legend rank supreme could barely contend with it, their combat strength would be greatly reduced. Activating the space-time profound, the space where Yi Chen and Sky Splitter were was violently distorted. They suddenly appeared thousands of miles away, narrowly escaping the Sea Fiend domain. Hateful space-time profound. Empyrean Sea Fiend hated the space-time profound. This kind of profound was absolutely top-notch when it came to escaping. Unless he could trap the other party, he could only slowly chase. Sea Fiend Heaven Torrential Seal. Taking a deep breath, Empyrean Sea Fiend increased his speed. At the same time, he raised his right hand, and black light flickered as he slammed his palm towards the distant Yi Chen. Rumble. Like a landslide, like an earthquake, like a tsunami, like a flood, the violent palm energy rushed towards Yi Chen. Along the way, the flood transformed into a giant seal that shot out. Danger. For a moment, Yi Chen felt his blood flow in reverse and his head felt heavy. The seal behind him seemed to be very far away from him, but the pressure it brought with it was inconceivably great. The space and time he was in seemed to have been locked down by it. Once the seal landed, he and the entire space and time would be flattened and crushed. Such a domineering supreme martial art. Yi Chen had seen Ying Liexiong's reopening heaven and earth, Tai Tan's cleaving the heavens and splitting the earth, Chen Tianding's shattering stars, and Yun Piaomiao's apocalyptic lightning punishment. The first four might not be weaker than this move in terms of profoundness, but in terms of battle prowess, the person who used the first four moves was still much weaker than their opponent. Fortunately, my spacetime ultimacy has reached the large success stage. Relying on the space and time power, Yi Chen avoided the attack range of the seal. The distance between the two was very far, and the seal would take some time to reach Yi Chen. If Yi Chen couldn't dodge it, he might as well hang his neck and die. Empyrean Sea Fiend's demonic power surged like a vast ocean. He didn't care about the loss of demonic power as he crazily chased after Yi Chen. Sometimes it was a seal, sometimes it was a black water dragon, and sometimes it was countless black ropes. Unfortunately, with his space and time power, Yi Chen was billions of times more slippery than a mudfish. No matter how Empyrean Sea Fiend roared, he couldn't do anything to him. Do you only know how to run? Empyrean Sea Fiend was used to acting like a tyrant on the desolate god continent. After entering the desolate god secret territory for more than 100,000 years, and after coming out, he was teased by Yi Chen. His murderous intent surged, and he hated that he couldn't tear Yi Chen into pieces to relieve the hatred in his heart. Yi Chen didn't care about Empyrean Sea Fiend. He was just thinking about what to do next. He couldn't keep running. After thinking for a long time, he couldn't come up with an answer. Looking back at Empyrean Sea Fiend, Yi Chen frowned. I don't know where this old guy came from. Could it be the desolate god secret territory? Isn't it said that only those who enter the desolate god secret territory cannot leave? Or maybe it's just a rumor, not true. With my current strength, I can't compete with a peak legendary supreme unless my sword intent and sword domain reach the highest realm. The leaders of the 5 major tribes were all peak legendary supreme. The reason they had their current strength was mainly because their martial yuan spirits were strong enough. According to Yi Chen's guess, their martial yuan spirits were at the late silver realm. However, for geniuses, martial yuan spirits were the most difficult to improve, because it required accumulation and couldn't be achieved overnight. Thus, if Yi Chen wanted to make up for the shortcomings of his martial yuan spirit, he could only do so if his sword intent and sword domain reached the highest realm. Although my sword intent can improve every day, I don't know when it will end. There is some hope for sword domain. Sword intent was the purest and couldn't tolerate any impurities. Sword domain was a person's achievement in sword Dao, which was directly related to the swordsman's cultivation method. If Yi Chen's Green Lotus sword spell could break through from supreme to legendary, his sword domain would have a great chance of breaking through to the 9th realm. At that time, he would really soar into the sky. Unknowingly, the two had arrived near the desolate god secret territory. This kid is too hard to deal with. I can't catch him in a short time. It's better to send him into the desolate god secret territory. With his strength, he won't survive more than a year in there. A thought flashed in Empyrean Sea Fiend's mind. Putting his thoughts into action, Empyrean Sea Fiend began to operate a very rare supreme secret technique. After 10 breaths, a triangular star suddenly appeared, with Empyrean Sea Fiend at one corner. The triangular star grew bigger and bigger, and Yi Chen couldn't dodge it with his spacetime profound several times. This triangular star wasn't an offensive secret technique, so there was no way to escape. Finally, Yi Chen was covered by the triangular star, and the last corner was inside the desolate god secret territory. 3-star position. Empyrean Sea Fiend roared, his surging demonic power pouring into the triangular star. Whoosh! Empyrean Sea Fiend's figure moved along the triangular star, quickly moving towards Yi Chen's corner, while Yi Chen moved along the triangular star, moving towards the corner inside the desolate god secret territory. Not good. Yi Chen was shocked. He had never seen such a strange secret technique that could forcibly change the position of others. Open for me. Yi Chen erupted with everything he could, but it didn't even create a splash. If the triangular star's energy was a surging river, then Yi Chen was just an ordinary fish, unable to swim against the current or jump out of the river. Bo. In the end, Yi Chen entered the desolate god's secret territory, and after Yi Chen reached the other corner, the triangular star quickly disappeared. Although this wasn't an offensive secret technique, it still caused the barrier of the desolate god's secret territory to fluctuate a few times, and a trace of the fluctuation followed the triangular star and hit Empyrean Sea Fiend. Spitting out a mouthful of blood, Empyrean Sea Fiend's face turned pale. The desolate god's will was too overbearing. 3-star position wasn't an offensive secret technique, so it stood to reason that it shouldn't have caused fluctuations in the barrier of the desolate god's secret territory. It was just like entering the desolate god's secret territory wouldn't have any effect, but it still hit Empyrean Sea Fiend. Chapter 1382. Ph. Entering the desolate god's secret territory means certain death. So what if you're a genius? As long as you haven't matured, you're still a weakling. Empyrean Sea Devil sneered and turned to leave. In his heart, Yi Chen was already a dead man. Back then, he and Empyrean Evil Light were able to come out alive because they were both peak legend rank supremes. In addition, they also had 2 high-level legend rank Starry Sky Bear Dog Kings. Even so, the two had lived miserable lives for more than 100,000 years. Even the Starry Sky Bear Dog Kings had been killed one by one. Whoosh! Empyrean Sea Devil disappeared without a trace. Outside, what Yi Chen saw was a lush green forest. But after entering the desolate god's secret territory, Yi Chen and Heaven Splitter appeared in the sky above a desert. Heaven Splitter, be careful. At this time, Yi Chen could only rely on Heaven Splitter's hearing and smell. The desolate god continent's laws were unique. The most primitive senses were the most useful. The effect of soul force was far inferior. Heaven Splitter didn't make a sound. He nodded his huge head. The desolate god's secret territory gave him a huge pressure. He was afraid that his roar would attract some terrifying vicious beast. What the two didn't know was that in the depths of the desert, a black furry thing was quietly climbing up. The quicksand on both sides was like flowing water and didn't pose much of an obstacle. Heaven Splitter shook his tail in annoyance. He could faintly feel danger approaching, but he couldn't clearly determine where it was coming from. Hiss! Just as Heaven Splitter was getting more and more annoyed, a big bump suddenly appeared on the surface of the desert not far away. A grey fountain rushed out from the top of the bump. The fountain was powerful, but upon closer inspection, it wasn't a fountain at all. It was clearly sticky grey spider silk. Although Yi Chen's hearing and smell weren't as good as Heaven Splitter's, his reaction speed was far higher. With a wave of his hand, space-time distorted, and Yi Chen and Heaven Splitter disappeared from their original positions. The grey spider silk missed its target and fell to the ground. It stuck to the desert surface and emitted a corrosive sound. Su su su. The moment Yi Chen and Sky Splitter disappeared, a black shadow chased after them along the surface of the desert. It had 8 limbs and a chubby, furry body covered in greyish-black stripes. It was clearly a spider beast. Its body was 20 meters wide and had 64 compound eyes. Each compound eye was like a crystal with many facets. One of the facets showed where Yi Chen and Sky Splitter had appeared. So fast. Yi Chen looked back and was a little surprised. The spider beast's 8 limbs didn't land on the ground at the same time, but one by one. It looked like it was flying close to the surface of the desert. Every time one of its limbs landed on the ground, a large hole would appear in the desert below. Shockwaves would spread out, causing its speed to reach an unimaginable level. It was probably several times faster than its flying speed. In just a few breaths, the spider beast had caught up. Chaotic stance. Yi Chen jumped up from Sky Splitter's back, unsheathed the heavenly sword, and used the chaotic stance. The current spacetime sword art was equivalent to a supreme sword art, 100 times stronger than the 5 elements sword art. The moment the chaotic stance was used, spacetime became distorted. It was like countless pieces of glass interweaved together and enveloped the spider beast. Clang, 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 the hairs on the spider beast's body stood up and emitted a fine light. The crisscrossing sword light slashed on it, but it could only cut off a large amount of the hairs. Moreover, the remaining sword light couldn't even break the spider beast's skin. In terms of defense, the spider beast could definitely resist the attacks of high-level legendary supremes. It opened its mouth and shot a spider silk at Yi Chen. There were only two places on its body that could shoot spider silk. One was its tail, and the other was its mouth. The spider silk shot out from its tail was very thick and viscous, used to bind the enemy. There was only one spider silk shot out from its mouth, but its penetrative power was very strong and its speed was much faster. It could be used to attack the enemy. Yi Chen wanted to test the spider beast's strength, so he slashed with his sword. The spider silk seemed to have a mind of its own as it entangled Yi Chen's sky sword. As the spider beast retracted its silk, Yi Chen felt that sky sword was about to fly out of his hand. Break! His right wrist that was holding sky sword shook, and the destructive sword chi surged, breaking the spider silk inch by inch. The sky sword was a 9-star Earth Saint artifact, and contained a powerful might in itself. The spider beast wanted to entangle the sky sword with its silk, but it was naturally unable to do so. In close combat, the sky sword's offensive power was even more powerful than his own. The desolate god's secret domain is full of dangers. Sky Splitter's strength is still too low. If I kill this spider beast and let Sky Splitter devour it, it should be able to step into the mid-level legendary beast rank. The stronger Sky Splitter was, the more help it would be to Yi Chen. Yi Chen needed its sense of smell, hearing, and acute danger perception. With this thought in mind, Yi Chen took a deep breath and flew towards the spider beast. Illusion sword form. A circle of sword light bubble expanded and enveloped the spider beast. Immediately, it fell into an illusion. Although it wouldn't stay in the illusion for long, 1 or 2 seconds would already be amazing. However, it would at least buy some time for Yi Chen. Sure enough, after 2 moments, the spider ferocious beast broke free from the illusion. However, before it could do anything after waking up, a sword pierced through its head. Ashes scattered all over the sky. Spacetime Sword Technique's second move, Sword Burial. This move's ferocity was not even comparable to the Black Hole stance. It was a pure killing sword move. Green juice splattered everywhere as the spider beast struggled violently. Its front 4 limbs were like sharp blades, stabbing towards Yi Chen, creating a tearing sound. Yi Chen wasn't greedy. This beast's vitality far surpassed that of a supreme being. This sword strike had only slightly injured it, and this was also due to the sharpness of the heavenly sword. Otherwise, Yi Chen wouldn't have been confident in piercing through the spider beast's head. Withdrawing and floating backwards, Yi Chen avoided the spider beast's limbs. At the same time, the third form of the spacetime sword art, Black Hole form, was ready. He was just waiting for the spider beast to crash into him. The spider beast was thoroughly enraged by Yi Chen. Relying on its huge body and tyrannical vitality, its 8 limbs quickly swept across the ground as it rushed towards Yi Chen. Yi Chen's expression was grave as he instantly executed the black hole form. In an instant, 5 rotating black spots appeared in front of him. As the black spots appeared, a terrifying gravitational force burst forth and superimposed on each other. By the time the spider beast realized something was wrong, it was already too late. Its huge body was directly sucked in by the 5 black spots. Due to its inconceivably powerful defense and terrifying vitality, the 5 black spots were unable to tear it apart at once even though they were constantly devouring its body. Its flesh and blood were only reduced piece by piece, and the spider beast's vitality was also rapidly fading. What a pity! Yi Chen's eyes flashed with infinite pity. Just now, Sky Splitter had told him that a group of beasts was rushing over from all directions. If they didn't leave now, they wouldn't be able to. Chapter 1383. Sky Splitter, let's go. Not caring about the spider beast that was about to be killed, Yi Chen mounted Sky Splitter and prepared to break out of the encirclement. In just a blink of an eye, he could already see the beasts surrounding him. It was a huge pack of huge wolf beasts. They were called huge wolf beasts because they looked very similar to wolves. Of course, beasts were beasts after all, and they could not look exactly like wolves. These huge wolf beasts had 6 legs and a huge head. Correspondingly, their teeth were huge as well. It's actually an iron fang. Yi Chen was startled. The Iron Fang beast was a novice legendary fierce beast. A single Iron Fang beast wasn't scary at all. It was many times weaker than any novice legendary fierce beast, and even a pinnacle super fierce beast could contend with it. This was mainly because the Iron Fang beast's attack method was very simple, and the only threatening thing was its bite. However, once the Iron Fang beast formed a large group, it would be a real disaster. With its terrifying bite force, the Iron Fang beast could even bite through the defense of a high-level legendary fierce beast. Even a pinnacle legendary fierce beast wouldn't dare to ignore the bite of the Iron Fang beast. Only a pinnacle legendary fierce beast like the gold-eating beast with an extremely abnormal defense wouldn't be afraid of being surrounded by the Iron Fang beast. A large number of Iron Fang surrounded them. At a glance, there were at least 500 of them. Seeing so many Iron Fang beasts, the heavily injured spider beast no longer dared to act like a superior. It dived its head down and immediately dove into the desert. Unfortunately, the Iron Fang beasts were extremely cunning and wouldn't make a useless encirclement. Dozens of Iron Fang beasts that dove into the desert forced the spider beast out. What followed next was the scene of the spider ferocious beasts fighting the group of iron-toothed beasts. Although the spider ferocious beasts had suffered heavy injuries and their strength had dropped a lot, they were still high-grade legendary rank ferocious beasts. Every time the spider silk on their tails shot out, 4 or 5 iron-toothed beasts would be stuck. The corrosive power of the spider silk easily corroded the iron-toothed beasts into a sour and stinky liquid. In just a short while, 60 to 70 iron-toothed beasts had died under the spider silk. Of course, the spider beast didn't have it easy either. Its huge body had completely become a target for the Iron Fang beasts. It was bitten until it was covered in blood and flesh. Its life force was getting weaker and weaker. By the time Yi Chen and Sky Splitter had escaped the encirclement, the spider beasts had been devoured by the iron-toothed beasts. The desolate god's secret realm is too savage. Without sufficient strength, it's hard to move an inch here. Seeing the spider ferocious beast being divided and eaten by the Iron Fang beasts, Yi Chen felt very emotional. That was a high-level legendary ferocious beast, yet it was killed by a group of Iron Fang beasts just like that. At this moment, how could he not understand that if he wanted to survive in the desolate god's secret realm, he would either need absolute strength or sufficient numbers. Without both, he could only rely on luck. During the 10 years in the desolate god's secret realm, Yi Chen had encountered more than 10 dangers. The most dangerous one was when he was chased by a peak legendary ferocious beast. That peak legendary ferocious beast had the time and space profound bloodline. It had chased Yi Chen for a whole month, almost pushing Yi Chen into a desperate situation. Fortunately, Yi Chen's luck had always been very strong. When his life was in danger, he hid in a cave. The cave was very narrow and very deep. This peak legendary ferocious beast couldn't enter at all. Just like this, Yi Chen stayed in the cave for a whole 5 years. Fortunately, he had raised a large number of ferocious beasts in the 5-element space. Otherwise, he would have starved to death. Sky Splitter, I don't know if we can get out of here alive. Yi Chen finally understood the dangers of the desolate god's secret realm. It was simply not a life for humans. After only 15 years, he felt tired. If it was 1,000 years, 10,000 years, or even 100,000 years, he didn't have the confidence to survive. Sometimes, confidence and strength were equal. Without sufficient strength, how could one have enough confidence? Sky Splitter rubbed his head against Yi Chen's body. All these years, Yi Chen had always been protecting him. He also wanted to protect Yi Chen once, but his strength was too low. No matter, let's take one step at a time. Even if we face a desperate situation, we can't give up. Yi Chen said to himself. Unfalling Eagle Tribe. Ying Liexiong was a little annoyed. The return of Celestial Master Sea Fiend and Celestial Master Evil Light was not a good thing for the 5 tribes. Originally, these two wanted to leave the desolate god continent, so they didn't care much about power, nor did they plan to combine the 5 tribes into one and form a 9th-rank tribe. But this time, the two had obviously given up on the idea of leaving the desolate god continent and wanted to control the 5 tribes in one fell swoop. Fortunately, the leaders of the 5 tribes all had heavenly saint weapons. Although the two were strong, they didn't dare to be too oppressive for a while. After all, the two did not have absolute confidence in suppressing the leaders of the 5 tribes. But this was only temporary. Once the two ran out of patience, they would definitely bare their fangs and fight. Are the future of the desolate race going to be handed over to them? Ying Liexiong was very unwilling. Similarly, the leaders of the other 4 tribes were also unwilling. The 5 of them often contacted each other secretly. Desolate God's secret realm. Yi Chen had spent 50 years in there. He had been annoyed at the beginning, but now he was calm. He knew that annoyance was useless. The desolate god mystic realm was very big. Yi Chen didn't know where he was or where he had arrived. He was completely relying on his intuition to hurry and wander around. Fortunately, in these 50 years, Sky Splitter had become a mid-level legendary fierce beast and had some strength. On this day, Yi Chen came to a valley. They thought that there were fierce beasts in the valley, but once they entered, Yi Chen and Sky Splitter immediately felt that something was wrong. The entire valley gave off a quiet feeling. Looking back, the valley entrance had disappeared, replaced by a thick fog. They couldn't see the path they had come from. There was no other way. The man and beast continued moving forward, gradually going deeper into the valley. And the fog behind them was also spreading. It seemed that with every step they took, the fog would spread a little more. Yi Chen didn't dare to be careless. He placed his right hand on the hilt of the heavenly sword. "Welcome to my world." Suddenly, a voice came. Yi Chen and Sky Splitter looked around, but they couldn't find where the voice came from. It seemed that the voice should have come from here. "Who is it?" Yi Chen said loudly. "Wrong, I'm not human. I'm just a desolate spirit created by Lord Desolate God." In front of Yi Chen, a white light flashed and a human-shaped rabbit appeared. So fast. Yi Chen squinted his eyes. He couldn't sense any power from the human-shaped rabbit, but its speed made him know that it was extremely dangerous. It was definitely not weaker than the baboon fierce beast, Tifula. "This is your world." Yi Chen didn't know what it was planning, so he tried to communicate with it. "That's right." A golden carrot appeared in the human-shaped rabbit's hand. It took a bite and said, "Since you have come to my world, you have to accept my test. If not, you will die." Chapter 1384. What is the test? Yi Chen didn't need to guess to know that the test would be very dangerous. However, he had no other choice. "Defeat my 7 brothers." The humanoid rabbit waved its hand, and 7 humanoid rabbits appeared in front of it. These 7 humanoid rabbits weren't exactly the same. Some were extremely muscular, some were extremely slender, some were extremely short, and some were chubby. The first humanoid rabbit had a more balanced body, and of course, it looked the most dangerous of them all. The humanoid rabbit continued, "My 7 brothers have the same foundation as you. You start the challenge from little 8. If you fail within a year, you will be killed, and so on. Challenge little 7, you have 2 years. Challenge little 6, 4 years. Challenge little 5, 8 years. As for your pet, lend it to me to play with for a while. If you can survive, I will return it to you." The humanoid rabbit waved his hand, and Sky Splitter uncontrollably ran over. Riding on Sky Splitter's back, the humanoid rabbit disappeared into the fog. "Brothers, take good care of him." In the following days, Yi Chen was inexplicably subjected to the test. 80 was the strongest humanoid rabbit. It was more than 2 meters tall, and its arms were even thicker than Yi Chen's thighs. The muscles all over its body were intertwined. From its body, Yi Chen could sense the purest violence, even purer than the beast's. "I have 1 year to challenge him. Let's see how strong he is first." With this in mind, Yi Chen stepped forward to challenge little 8. As for the other 6 humanoid rabbits, They had already disappeared into the fog after their boss left. "Come, let me see how strong you are." Little 8 waved his hand, his eyes filled with provocation. "Please advise me." Yi Chen unsheathed Heaven's sword and unleashed a chaotic stance. As this sword was unleashed, the void seemed to shatter into thousands of pieces, intertwining with each other. The move is not bad, but the power is too weak. Little 8 shook his head and unleashed a punch. Swish. Yi Chen's sword attack collapsed, and he was forced to take a step back. So strong. Yi Chen's eyes turned solemn as he unleashed the second style of space-time sword, Burial Sword. The power is still too weak. Little 8 punched out again, breaking the sword burial style cleanly. Is this what it means to defeat 10 with brute force? Yi Chen did not feel that Little 8's fist technique was very profound, but his own sword technique was unable to contend against the opponent's fist technique. It collapsed upon contact. Black hole form. Yi Chen used his strongest sword technique, black hole form. As the heavenly sword was swung, 5 rotating black dots enveloped Little 8. This move is interesting, but it's a pity that its power is still lacking. Ai's right arm muscles swelled as it punched out. Crackling sounds could be heard as 5 black dots exploded. A berserk power shot out in all directions, blowing Yi Chen away in a sorry state. 80 stood still and commented, "If you want to resist me, your power Upanishad must reach the consummate realm. Do as you see fit." Must the power Upanishad reach the complete realm? Yi Chen fell into deep thought. In the next 3 months, Yi Chen would challenge Little 8 every 3 days. He realized that he could feel the source of the power Upanishad from Little 8's fist technique, which was incredible. One had to know that he could not feel the source of the power Upanishad from Heaven Splitter. He could only feel the existence of the power Upanishad. Could it be? Yi Chen thought of a possibility. Legend had it that after the Upanishad reached the complete realm, there was an even higher realm, and that was the law. If the opponent had grasped a trace of the power law, they could indeed sense the source of the power Upanishad more clearly. However, even an ordinary demigod could not comprehend the law. Could it be that the opponent in front of him was a powerful demigod? No, since the opponent was created by the desolate god, it was very simple for the desolate god to bestow the power of law to them. They did not need to reach the demigod realm. Thinking of this, Yi Chen's heart trembled. Clearly, the humanoid rabbits were different from the desolate god tower's desolate spirits. They were more special and unpredictable. After exchanging blows again and again, Yi Chen's comprehension of the power Upanishad deepened. Power is everywhere. Power can penetrate the heavens and the earth. Power exists in every corner, including the mind. Power is power, and it comes from faith. Another month passed. Finally, Yi Chen's power Upanishad reached the complete realm. With the improvement of the power Upanishad, his heart power had also improved by a lot. From the mid-stage of the heart sword realm to the peak of the mid-stage of the heart sword realm, he was only 1 step away from the late stage of the heart sword realm. The power Upanishad was too special. One had to have enough faith. Without enough faith, it would be impossible to completely understand the power Upanishad. However, the requirement for a refined body sovereign to understand the power Upanishad was much lower. Their chi and blood were very vigorous, and they were innately compatible with the power Upanishad. It was just like in the world of ordinary people, strong people would always give people a sense of security. This was also a manifestation of power. With the Upanishad of the power Upanishad, all of Yi Chen's sword arts had been upgraded to supreme sword arts. Among them, the space-time sword art was the strongest. It was originally not a weak supreme sword art, but now, it was unknown how many times stronger it was. Very good. In just 4 months, you have comprehended the power Upanishad to the Upanishad. Your comprehension is not bad. You have passed my test. Little 8 nodded. He was very satisfied with Yi Chen's performance. I want to have a spar with you. Since the other party's foundation was the same as his, Yi Chen wanted to know what level the other party's strength was at, and whether he had grasped a trace of the power law. Have a spar with me. Little 8's body, which was about to leave, stopped. He turned his head and looked at Yi Chen. Do you think that I am too friendly to you? Little Eight's eyes turned blood-red, and his killing intent was revealed. Yi Chen was about to explain, but it was too late. Little Eight's thick legs stomped on the ground. Before Yi Chen could react, he saw a violent fist smashing over. This fist contained incomparably terrifying violence. Yi Chen was sure that even the baboon ferocious beast, Tifula, wasn't this terrifying. Little Eight, you are being mischievous again. A hand stopped Little Eight's fist. It was the human-shaped rabbit that Yi Chen saw at the beginning. He had appeared beside Yi Chen out of nowhere and blocked this attack for Yi Chen. Otherwise, Yi Chen would have died. Big brother. The blood in Little Eight's eyes faded. He glared at Yi Chen and turned to leave. Yi Chen heaved a sigh of relief. He was a little confused. He didn't know why the other party wanted to kill him. My 7 brothers, besides second brother and third brother, the other 5 are more irritable. You must not disobey them or do anything unnecessary. The human-shaped rabbit said while gnawing on the golden radish. Understood. After this lesson, how could Yi Chen not understand that in this place, he was just an ant? All he had to do was accept the test obediently and not do anything else. Your comprehension is not bad. Otherwise, I wouldn't have saved you. I would have let you be killed by Little Eight. Take care. The human-shaped rabbit took a step and disappeared without a trace. Chapter 1385. Very quickly, 7 came out. Xiao Qi's body was tall and slim, slightly taller than Yi Chen. It had a pair of rabbit eyes that were very narrow and sharp. Although 8 is stronger than me, similar to second and third brother, my test is much harder than 8's. If you don't meet the requirements, I will kill you. 7 said without any emotions. Understood. Yi Chen nodded his head. Very good, I will only use 1,000th of my strength. If you can defeat me, then you pass. The 7 of them were all stronger than Yi Chen and it was impossible for Yi Chen to defeat them. But Boss gave them a rule which was to suppress their strength. 8 suppressed it the most but he didn't like to be defeated by Yi Chen, so he said that Yi Chen passed. But Yi Chen said that he wanted to exchange blows with him which infuriated 8. Without a doubt, Yi Chen lost the first time he clashed with 7. Xiao Qi specialized in leg arts. Once that pair of rabbit legs kicked toward Yi Chen, the sky was filled with leg shadows. Each leg shadow contained an explosive power, and Yi Chen could sense the 5 profound of earth, water, fire, wind, and strength. However, Yi Chen could also sense that Xiao Qi had not mastered the power law, but his leg arts were much more profound than his sword arts. 2 years, how can I defeat him? This was just 1,000th of his strength. If he went all out, he could smash him into pieces with one kick and wipe him out of this world. Your sword technique hasn't reached the peak and you haven't merged the mysteries of strength and the other mysteries. 7 reminded Yi Chen. Yi Chen faintly nodded. Indeed, because he had only raised his power profound to perfection half a year ago, his sword arts couldn't reach perfection in such a short time. Moreover, Xiao Qi's leg arts were clearly a level higher than his sword arts. If he wanted to defeat 1,000th of the opponent's strength, his sword arts would have to be at least at the same level as the opponent's leg arts. 2 years wasn't long but it wasn't short either. It depended on how he spent it. To Yi Chen, these 2 years had passed too quickly. In the blink of an eye, a year had passed. The 4 symbols sword art has finally reached perfection. After countless exchanges, Yi Chen's 4 symbols sword art became more and more perfect. In the end, its might even surpassed that of the space-time sword art. Every move was naturally domineering. Overlord Sword of the 4 Elephants. Challenging 7 once more, Yi Chen used the first stance of the 4 Elephant Sword technique, the 4 Elephant Overlord Sword. With a flash of sword light, the Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, and Black Tortoise tangled together, slashing towards the leg shadows. Crackle. This time, the 2 of them were evenly matched. Take my kick again. This was the first time 7 moved. Her speed was unbelievably fast. In just a blink of an eye, 7 appeared on the right side of Yi Chen and kicked. This kick made Yi Chen feel a world-destroying power. If he wasn't careful, even the Saint artifact armor wouldn't be able to protect his life. Even if he didn't die, he would be heavily injured. For extremes of heaven and earth, the four beast sword energy condensed on his body, and the azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, and black tortoise sword auras appeared around Yi Chen's body, cancelling out a part of Xiao Qi's leg energy. Meanwhile, Yi Chen flipped his wrist, and the heaven sword violently stabbed toward Xiao Qi. A chaotic sword light condensed on the sword tip. 4 elephant sword technique third stance, destruction sword. Yi. 7 hurriedly swept his leg towards the sword light. Honglong. A destructive shockwave radiated out in all directions. 7 flew backward and landed on the ground in a stagger. You've actually created a new sword technique. You've won. Xiao Qi looked at Yi Chen with a shocked expression. In the past, among the people who had entered the desolate god's secret realm, there were very few who had passed Xiao Qi's level, not to mention her level. In the past million years, apart from Yi Chen, only 9 people had passed her level. Moreover, they had spent more time than Yi Chen, which was almost 2 years. I was lucky. Yi Chen heaved a sigh of relief. The destruction sword was on the same level as the black hole stance. However, the 4 elephant sword technique merged power more completely, which was why it was much stronger than the black hole stance. If not, he wouldn't have been able to defeat 7. There is no luck. This is your potential. 7 flashed into the mist. Next is 6. I don't know what aspect I need to improve on this time. 8 allowed his power to reach the max realm. 7's test allowed his power to be merged into the 4 elephant sword technique. Yi Chen guessed that the content of each stage would be different. To Yi Chen, the test in the valley was both a danger and an opportunity. 6 came out. Little 6 was very short, only a little over a meter tall. You're pretty good to be able to make it to my place. But let me tell you something. In the past million years, of the 9 people who made it to my place, only 4 of them managed to defeat me when I was at 1,000th of my strength, Little 6 said slowly. I will do my best. 6's strength wasn't much stronger than 7's. Yi Chen, who created the destruction sword, could even exchange dozens of blows with him and didn't collapse right away. Little 6 specialized in palm techniques, which contained the 5 elemental profundities and power profundities. They are both supreme martial skills, but my annihilation sword is slightly weaker than his. It seems like I have to create the 4th style of the 5 elements sword art. Of course, the prerequisite is that I have to integrate the profound of power into the 5 elements sword art, just like the 4 symbols sword art. In the following days, Yi Chen didn't use the 4 elephant sword technique to fight 6. Instead, he used the 5 element sword technique. In the first year, Yi Chen lost miserably every time. Luckily, 6 controlled his strength and didn't kill Yi Chen within 4 years. Otherwise, Yi Chen would have died hundreds of times. In the second year, Yi Chen successfully merged the power mysteries into the 5 element sword technique. It increased the power of the 5 element sword technique. Unfortunately, the third move, defense sword technique, was much weaker than the destruction sword technique. Even the destruction sword technique couldn't do anything to 6, let alone the defense sword technique. I have to create the 4th move. Yi Chen carefully observed 6 palm technique and hoped to find inspiration. The 5 elements are mutually reinforcing and subduing each other. 5 elements is the most stable among the complementary powers Upanishads because it is composed of 5 different powers Upanishads. If I want to use the deepest essence of the 5 elements Upanishads, I must learn from each other and find the key point. Yi Chen did not stop thinking at all times. His mind was filled with inspiration. On the 3rd year, Yi Chen, who had been blown away once again, seemed to have a 5-element mountain in his mind. Each mountain was shaped like a huge stone sword, incomparably heavy. Got it. Joy flashed in Yi Chen's eyes and he waved his sword. Whoosh. The thick sword light seemed like it was going to crush everything in front of it. It slashed at 6 with unstoppable momentum. Chapter 1386. Rumble. Little 6's entire body was sent flying. Yi Chen's sword was like a hole, like a mountain, like the sea, like the earth, like the sky. As this sword slashed out, Yi Chen felt as if his soul and body had been swept out, and there was a feeling of emptiness. Heavy sword style. The fourth style of the 5 elements sword style, heavy sword style. In the universe, the 5 elements were the most stable. If they continued to evolve, they would become planets, and planets were the place where all life lived. Stepping on the earth was very stable. Yi Chen's heavy sword style had obtained this essence. What is the name of this move? Little Six curiously sized up Yi Chen. Heavy sword style. Yi Chen replied. Heavy sword style, not bad. Maybe you have a chance to reach third brother's level. Of course, the premise is that you can continue to improve. After saying this, Little Six entered the fog and disappeared. Watching Little Six leave, Yi Chen looked at the sword in his hand and said to himself, heavy sword style, this is the eruption of all my inspiration. Even if I can create the third style of the yin-yang sword style, it will definitely not be as good as the heavy sword style. After all, the 5 elements sword style was the first sword style created by Yi Chen, and Yi Chen had also spent the most effort on it. The heavy sword style could be said to be a transformation of the 5 elements sword style, a sublimation. If the 5 elements sword style was the soil, then the heavy sword style was a sapling that grew on the soil, absorbing the essence of the 5 elements sword style. In terms of power, the heavy sword style was the well-deserved number 1 sword style of Yi Chen. The shattering sword style and the black hole style couldn't compare to it. In fact, Yi Chen felt that the supreme martial arts of the 5 tribe leaders or Empyrean Sea Fiend couldn't compare to the heavy sword style. He felt that the heavy sword style was weaker than the heavy sword style. This had nothing to do with the passage of time. It was a completely coincidental burst of inspiration. My current strength shouldn't be much weaker than the leaders of the 5 tribe. Yi Chen was sure that he was still not a match for the leaders of the 5 major tribes. However, it was not like before, where the gap between them was ridiculously huge. The martial Tao primordial spirits of the leaders of the 5 major tribes were stronger than his. They were at least at the intermediate silver level. However, his heart power was higher than theirs. He was at the peak of the intermediate stage of the heart sword realm. He was only 1 step away from the late stage. Heart power had nothing to do with time. Generally, the more talented one was, the higher one's heart power would be. Those who relied on time to improve their heart power would not be too high unless they had some kind of opportunity. For example, the Redbud Flower tribe had a very high average heart power because they had the word heart left behind by the demigod. The 5 tribe leaders had the advantage of having a strong martial Dao Yuanshan and possessing a heavenly saint artifact. Yi Chen's advantage was that his heart force was strong and his heavy sword style was slightly better. However, compared to Empyrean Sea Fiend, Yi Chen was still ridiculously lacking. Not to mention anything else, just Empyrean Sea Fiend's 9th level domain was enough to strangle all of his advantages. Little Five was chubby and looked like a rolling ball as he walked. Yi Chen could tell at a glance that the other party was walking the path of body tempering. Moreover, it was not an ordinary path. Even with the naked eye, Yi Chen could see that the fat on Little Five's body was astonishingly elastic. As he walked, the fat on his body shook up and down, and a buzzing sound could be heard continuously. One could faintly see circles of ripples spreading out. If you can scratch my skin a little, you win. Little Five sat down and took a huge silver radish to gnaw on. He did not even look at Yi Chen as he enjoyed himself. That fat. Yi Chen frowned. He felt that it would not be easy to scratch Little Five's skin. After hesitating for a moment, Yi Chen began to attack. First, he used the Annihilation Sword. The penetrating power of this sword was very strong, enough to destroy everything. The heavenly sword stabbed out violently, and the chaotic sword light swept towards Little Five. Pop! A scene that made Yi Chen's scalp tingle occurred. When the chaotic sword light landed on Little Five's body, it felt as if it had landed on an elastic rubber. It first sank in and then bounced back, almost hitting Yi Chen himself. What kind of body tempering technique is this? Yi Chen clicked his tongue. Not giving up, Yi Chen held the sword with both hands and slashed out. An incomparably heavy sword light swept towards little 5 again. This sword was the heavy sword style, Yi Chen's strongest sword move. Unfortunately, although the heavy sword style was incomparably heavy, little 5's fat was even stronger. The heavy sword light slashed on it, causing the fat to tremble unceasingly. As the fat trembled, the power of the sword light continued to weaken. With a pu sound, the sword was sliced open and slashed on the ground to the right of little 5, leaving a sword mark. The heavy sword style was still ineffective. So that's how it is. Yi Chen finally understood the secret of little 5's fat. Little 5 was indeed walking the path of body tempering, and his body tempering technique actually contained the profound meaning of yin and yang. It was just like the Taiji fist, hard and soft, yin and yang coexisting. Unless the attack was much stronger than the defense, it would be impossible to break through the defense. Of course, he could also study the yin-yang sword style and create a yin-yang sword move that could restrain the opponent. Fortunately, the time limit for challenging little 5 was 8 years. There should be enough time. Giving up on other sword arts, Yi Chen began to use the yin-yang sword style to test little 5's fat. Yi Chen's yin-yang sword style currently had 2 styles. The first was yin and yang coexisting, and the second was yin-yang taikai yin and yang coexisting, and the sword qi had spirituality. It wouldn't increase or decrease, and it wouldn't dissipate. After locking onto the opponent's qi, unless the opponent died or was broken, it wouldn't disappear. However, little 5's fat wouldn't be affected by hard or soft methods. Yin and yang coexisting couldn't do anything about it, mainly because the power of yin and yang coexisting wasn't strong enough. Yi Chen's train of thought was to create an enhanced version of yin and yang coexisting. Time passed unknowingly. Yi Chen had more and more inspiration for the yin-yang sword style. As he was immersed in the yin-yang sword style for a long time, Yi Chen's every move, gaze, and train of thought contained the changes of yin and yang. This was something that even he didn't notice. Only little 5 looked at Yi Chen in surprise. Boss has good eyesight. It won't be long before this kid can break my yin-yang tyrant body. Little 5 thought in his heart. The 5th year. Done. Yi Chen revealed a smile on his face as he looked at little 5. Come on, let me see what sword move you have created. Little 5 stood up, and the fat on his body shook violently. With him as the center, circles of ripples spread out, as if a stone was thrown into a calm lake. This move of mine is called yin-yang wuji. Take this. Yin-yang sword style's first style, yin and yang coexisting. The second style, yin-yang taikai. The third style, yin-yang wuji. Holding the heavenly sword in his hand, Yi Chen seemed slow but was actually fast. He slashed out with his sword. Without a sound, a slippery sword qi that was like a loach swam towards little 5. Little 5's eyes narrowed, and the fat on his body shook even more violently. The sword qi kept swimming around Xiaowu's body, looking for a weak point. Xiaowu wanted to use his fat to repel the sword qi, but the sword qi was even more slippery than his fat. After several tries, Xiaowu said helplessly, "You win." Although the sword qi couldn't penetrate his defense for the time being, as time passed, he would eventually leave a flaw. Chapter 1387. You are the most talented person I have seen in a million years. Boss's vision is really not something we can compare with. But from Brother 4 onwards, you have to be careful. He has the 9th domain. Xiaowu was very optimistic about Yi Chen. Creating a sword movement that could restrain the yin-yang tyrant body in 8 years was not something that ordinary people could do. He had thought that Yi Chen would not be able to do it, but he did not expect that not only did he do it, he did it 3 years ahead of time. I will give it my all. Yi Chen found that these humanoid rabbits were actually quite gentle as long as they were not provoked. Little 4's body shape was very similar to Little 8's, but he did not have as many muscles as Little 8. He was a very burly type, and Yi Chen felt an invisible pressure from him. Little 4's voice was very cold. My domain is the scorching domain. If you can't resist it, you will be burned to ashes. With that said, with Little 4 as the center, a terrifying force spread out. Wherever it went, The ground melted and the void cracked. This scorching heat was no longer a simple change in temperature, but a change in the rules. Seeing this, Yi Chen's expression couldn't help but change. When Sea Demon Heavenly Venerable was chasing him, although his Sea Demon domain was equally frightening, he was running for his life at that time. How could he have the energy to feel the Sea Demon domain? He only felt that he was no match for it. Is this the 9th domain? Although the domain could not increase one's combat power by much, it could suppress the enemy's strength. When the enemy's strength was suppressed, it was equivalent to his own strength being increased in disguise. In short, the domain must not be weak. Even if it didn't suppress others, at least it couldn't be suppressed by others. Originally, Yi Chen thought that even if the 9th domain was many times stronger than the peak 8th domain, it would not be too outrageous. But now seeing the power of the scorching domain, he knew that he was wrong. The 9th domain was not on the same level as the peak 8th domain. The power of the 9th domain was not weaker than a perfect supreme martial art. Once enveloped, it was equivalent to being bombarded by a perfect supreme martial art at all times. Let alone using 100% of one's strength, it would be good if one could use 1,000th of one's strength. If one stayed inside for a long time, as Little Four said, he would be burned to ashes. If you can stay in the scorching domain for 15 minutes, you win. Little Four said. Let me try. After speaking, Yi Chen propped up his green lotus sword domain and walked into his opponent's scorching domain. Kai Kai. It was like a ball of snow thrown into a furnace. Within a few breaths, Yi Chen's green lotus sword realm had been melted, and he could no longer release it. Without the green lotus sword realm, Yi Chen could only use his immortal sword body to resist Little Four's scorching realm. 1 breath. 10 breath. 100 breath. I can't. Like a cooked shrimp, Yi Chen retreated from the scorching domain. His whole body was steaming hot, and his skin was red. 100 breaths is my limit. Yi Chen shook his head. Seeing that Yi Chen had retreated, Little Four immediately took back his scorching domain. Maintaining the scorching domain would consume a lot of his power, and it would be impossible for him to maintain it continuously. In the following month, Yi Chen did not try again. He was very clear that unless his green lotus sword realm could break through to the 9th level, or his immortal sword body could break through to the 14th level from the 12th level, he would not be able to resist his opponent's scorching domain. There was no need to think about the immortal sword body. Without enough supreme great swords, he would not be able to improve it. Therefore, the only way was to improve his green lotus sword realm. And the fastest way to improve his green lotus sword realm was to make a breakthrough in his martial arts. Yi Chen's green lotus sword spell was a supreme martial art. As long as he could break through to the legendary level, there was a 50% chance that he could make his green lotus sword realm reach the 9th level. Little Five's body training martial art contained the profound of yin and yang. I can also make my martial art contain the profound of the 5 elements. Keeping to his words, Yi Chen tried to combine the green lotus sword spell with the 5 elements profound. The earliest green lotus sword spell was a wood element sword spell, but it did not matter, since it did not conflict with the 5 elements profound, since there was a wood element profound within the 5 elements. As long as the wood element profound was the main element, it would be fine as long as the other 4 were the support. This was the so-called wood element being the main element of the 5 elements. Not only would it not affect the effect of the green lotus sword spell, it would also infinitely increase the effect of the green lotus sword spell. In the 3rd month, Yi Chen combined the wood element profound with the green lotus sword spell. The process was very smooth, since the green lotus sword spell was originally of the wood element. In the 6th month, Yi Chen combined the fire element profound with the green lotus sword spell. Wood fed fire, and the next would be earth. In the 2nd year, the earth element profound and the green lotus sword spell had been successfully combined. In the 4th year, the gold element profound and the green lotus sword spell had been successfully combined. In the 8th year, the water element profound and the green lotus sword spell had been successfully combined. The process was that wood fed fire, fire fed earth fed metal, and metal fed water. However, it was not over yet, because the 5 elements profound had not completed a cycle yet. Like a circle, wood fed fire, fire fed earth, earth fed metal, and metal fed water. In the end, water and wood needed to be connected together as well. In the 12th year, Yi Chen's body shone with a layer of blue light, which contained 5 different colors. Then, a huge 5-colored green lotus grew, bloomed, and bore fruit. With the birth of the 5-colored green lotus, Yi Chen sat on top of it with his legs crossed. The green lotus seemed to have become one with him. Shoo! Yi Chen opened his eyes, and a 5-colored godly light flashed out. So this is the legendary martial art. So magical. Although the supreme martial art was extremely powerful, compared to the legendary martial art, it was not even worth mentioning. The legendary martial art seemed to have its own consciousness, or perhaps it had combined with his bloodline. At this moment, the Green Lotus sword spell was not just a martial art, but more like the power of Yi Chen's bloodline. With one breath, the Green Lotus sword spell operated naturally. It was just like the qi and blood in the human body, operating naturally. There was no need to purposely activate it. With a thought, the Green Lotus sword realm was released. Gurgle. Gurgle, the sound of flowing water was heard, and the Green Lotus sword realm had an earth-shattering change. With Yi Chen as the center, a huge 5-colored green lotus shadow spread out and kept growing. Yi Chen had a feeling that if he used all of his power, the Green Lotus sword realm could cover 1 light year, 10 light years, or even more. Of course, it would have to be outside of the Huangshan continent, since the Huangshan continent was not even 1 light year big. The Huangshan continent was enough to limit the sword realm to a very small area. Little Four stared at Yi Chen without blinking. His eyes were filled with expectation. How could he not see that Yi Chen had made a huge breakthrough in the past 12 years? The Green Lotus sword realm had reached the 9th level. Come on. Little Four released his scorching domain. All right. Yi Chen maintained the Green Lotus sword realm as he walked towards Little Four step by step. Chapter 1388. Boom. 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 The Burning Field and the Green Lotus Sword Field were both level 9 domains. The moment the two clashed, a huge sound was produced, as if 2 worlds were colliding. Yi Chen frowned. He realized that the part of the Green Lotus Sword Field that was in contact with the Burning Field was gradually burning up. Ashes rose into the air, dancing in the air. After thinking for a while, Yi Chen could not help but feel relieved. Although they were both level 9 domains, there were still differences in strength. Compared to the Burning Field, the Green Lotus Sword Field was still a bit immature. It would be impossible for him to completely resist it. 100 breaths, 500 breaths, 15 minutes, very soon, Yi Chen had endured 15 minutes. What made his expression change was that his Green Lotus sword field had burned up more than half. He estimated that in another 15 minutes, the Green Lotus sword field would be completely burned up. Yi Chen estimated that the opponent's burning field was at least in the middle stage of the 9th level, or even the late stage. Boss, it seems like we really have a chance to leave the Desolate God's secret territory and return to Lord Desolate God's side. Little Four thought. The third brother was a human-shaped rabbit with a face full of smiles. Seeing him, Yi Chen felt his mood lighten up a lot. In a trance, he felt like he had arrived at a fragrant grassland. The sky was clear, and white clouds were floating in the sky. A gentle breeze blew past, and the green grass bent down, forming a soft ripple. Everything was so beautiful. What a scary influence. But the next moment, Yi Chen immediately woke up. At this moment, in his eyes, the humanoid rabbit old 3 had suddenly become countless times more dangerous. This kind of powerful warrior who could affect your mind without even noticing was a nightmare. You would not know when you would fall for it. The unknown was always the scariest. The power that was on the surface would only make people afraid. Not bad. You can actually wake up in 2 hours. The third brother nodded with a smile. What? Yi Chen felt that only a moment had passed. How did it become 2 hours? Don't be surprised. If your heart force can reach the perfect level, you can also do this. The third brother explained. Hearing this, Yi Chen nodded inwardly. Indeed, reaching the highest level in any aspect would result in unimaginable power. For example, reaching the 9th level of sword intent, the 9th level of sword domain, or breaking through to legendary level. Of course, in comparison, reaching the perfect level of heart force was even scarier. This did not mean that the perfect level of heart force was stronger than the 9th level sword intent or sword domain, but it was mainly because the perfect level of heart force could make people fall for it unknowingly. My test is very simple. If you can wake up in 10 breaths, then you will pass. 10 breaths. Of course, if his Yuanshan could break through to the silver intermediate level, he would be able to shorten the time needed. After all, the Yuanshan was the foundation of a person. If the Yuanshan was strong, it would be strong in every aspect. After all, the Yuanshan could not be born out of thin air. It was something that was derived from the Yuanshan. The third brother's test was 32 years. Yi Chen had to reach the late stage of heart force. Of course, if his Yuanshan could break through to the intermediate silver level, it would shorten the time. After all, the Yuanshan was the foundation of a person. The Yuanshan was equivalent to the heart force. The stronger the Yuanshan, the stronger the Yuanshan, the stronger the heart force. However, it could make the heart force more resistant to external influences. Speaking of which, the threat of being wiped out had actually helped him the most. Without it, he would not have improved so much. Imagine, if there were two people with the same comprehensive ability, and one was living a comfortable life while the other was living under the threat of death, who would improve the most? Of course, the threat of elimination was the greatest help to Yi Chen. Without the threat of elimination, Yi Chen would not have improved so much. Imagine two people with the same talent, one living a comfortable life, and the other living in the threat of death. Who would improve more? I have to pass the third brother's test. I have stayed in the desolate god's secret realm for hundreds of millions of years. Although there were many people like him who came to the third brother's place, only 10% of them succeeded. When it came to the second brother, they all died. I have to pass third bro and second bro's test. I've been in the desolate god's secret realm for hundreds of millions of years. In these hundreds of millions of years, although there were many people like him who made it to third bro's place, only 10% of them succeeded. When it came to second bro's place, they were all wiped out. I have stayed here long enough. The desolate god's place is my future harbor. In the mist, the human-shaped rabbit who was chewing on the golden carrot shouted in his heart. The heart force was vague and intangible. It was an invisible power, a power that transcended the natural world. It was the only power that was not limited by the heavenly Tao. The heart power of a sword artist was still different from normal people. If a normal person's heart power was gentle and unpredictable, then the heart power of a sword artist would be sharp and condensed. Yi Chen was sure that if his heart power reached completion, he would not be able to do what his third brother had done. But, on the other hand, the things that a sword artist's heart power could do were things that a normal person's heart power would not be able to do, such as directly shattering the enemy's spirit and fighting spirit. Destroying a person's spirit was more terrifying than confusing a person's spirit. If a person's spirit was destroyed, he would be like a walking corpse. 5 years. 10 years. 20 years. 25 years. In the blink of an eye, 25 years had passed. Yi Chen's heart force was still at the peak of the middle stage, unable to advance. This made Yi Chen a little anxious for the first time. However, the consequence of being anxious was that it would be harder for him to make a breakthrough. After all, once he was anxious, his heart would be in chaos. Once his heart was in chaos, how could he concentrate his heart force and make a breakthrough to the late stage? 28 years. 30 years. 31 years. There was only 1 year left from the 32 years. Sigh. The third brother sighed. For hundreds of millions of years, too many people had failed here. In fact, he also hoped that these people could pass, but he could not go easy on them. The boss would make adjustments according to the strength of the people who came, such as suppressing most of their strength, or testing them in certain aspects. The boss was also restricted by the rules of the secret realm and could not cheat. Although they were created by Lord Desolate God, and their lifespans were extremely long, to the point that even a supreme being could not imagine, they still had feelings and wishes, and the wish of the 8 brothers was to leave the Desolate God's secret realm. After they left, Lord Desolate God would send a new desolate spirit to replace them. There was only 1 month left. Yi Chen's heart was filled with unwillingness. He was calm and indifferent, but he was not a god. He had some weaknesses. No one was willing to die, and he was no exception. The last week, Yi Chen's eyes were scarlet red. His entire body was filled with unstable heart force. At this moment, Yi Chen was in a very dangerous situation. His heart force was very mysterious and dangerous at the same time. If he couldn't control it, he could easily trigger a heart demon. He might go crazy and die, or die from exhaustion of his heart force. He might even fall into a heart demon world and become a walking corpse. The last day, Yi Chen's hair instantly turned white. His essence, qi, and spirit had completely disappeared. It was as if he had become a corpse. The 3rd brother exclaimed softly. He couldn't help but look at Yi Chen. At this moment, his heart force couldn't even sense Yi Chen's existence. It was as if this person had disappeared. Condensing a point of heart force? Very soon, the 3rd brother saw through the mystery. It turned out that Yi Chen had condensed his heart force into a small point, wanting to make a final eruption. Even if this method succeeded, it would harm his vitality. Under normal circumstances, no one would dare to do such a thing. Chapter 1389. Yi Chen could no longer feel his own existence. It was as if he had truly died. There were no flickers of thoughts, no ripples of life. Heart force was actually the materialization of intelligence. Without heart force, intelligence would be lost. Therefore, focusing one's heart force on a single point was a very dangerous thing. It was very easy to turn one's fake death into real death. If one lost their intelligence, it was no different from being dead. In a muddle-headed world of darkness without a trace of light, a weak speck of light floated about. Who am I? What am I doing? Within the weak speck of light, a strand of thought appeared. Where is this? So strange, why am I here? The thought became more and more intense, causing the speck of light to become unstable. It was sometimes dim, and sometimes bright. I am Yi Chen. Suddenly, a firm voice rang out. The speck of light suddenly exploded, turning into a sun that radiated boundless light. Boom! Yi Chen woke up, and the spirit in his eyes was unprecedentedly intense. Meanwhile, his heart power had reached the next level, breaking through the limit and reaching the late stage. However, Yi Chen's hair didn't change back. It was still white like snow. Focusing one's heart force and then exploding it was very damaging to one's essence qi. The essence qi of a supreme being wasn't Shen Yuan, it was the source. It was very hard to replenish. Under normal circumstances, it would take at least 10,000 years to recover. Of course, that was under the situation of not using any treasures and slowly recovering. If there were rare treasures, it could shorten the time by 100 times, 1,000 times, or even 10,000 times. With his origin damaged, Yi Chen felt that his foundation had dropped by more than 70%. His martial Dao Yuan Shen was dim and cryptic, no longer as silver as before. But now, Yi Chen's heart force was unimaginably strong. Overall, his strength didn't decrease, but instead increased explosively. Good, very good. Old 3 laughed heartily. He originally thought that the other party had already broken down, but who would have thought that the other party had pushed himself to the brink of death, forcing him into a hopeless situation. Either he succeeded, or he perished, it was all up to him. 1 in 10,000, finally, one has appeared. The humanoid rabbit munching on the golden radish was so excited that he was about to go crazy. Not only was his talent high, but he was also ruthless to himself. Such a genius was definitely 1 in 10,000. There was not even 1 in 10,000 geniuses. When his heart force reached the late stage, Yi Chen discovered that there was a faint blue glow on his 3rd brother's body. Colored heart force. Yi Chen's heart thumped. According to the records, there was another realm after the great circle of heart force, and this realm was the light of the soul. From the looks of it, All three was just one step away from condensing the light of the soul. It was said that everyone's light of the soul was different. It reflected a person's true heart. If a seemingly kind person's light of the soul was dark, then it meant that they had a dark heart to begin with. Once they walked the path of darkness, they would become unprecedentedly powerful. Of course, it was still too early to talk about light of the soul. It was extremely difficult for demigods to condense light of the soul, and once they succeeded, they could easily wipe out other demigods. "Are you ready?" Old San said to Yi Chen. Ready. Yi Chen's heart force was formless and colorless, but it was abnormally condensed, just like a sharp sword. However, in the next moment, Yi Chen's eyes became dazed. Very soon, Yi Chen woke up, and he couldn't help but look at Old San. He himself didn't know how long he had been bewitched. Old San smiled. 7 breaths. Congratulations. Success. Yi Chen heaved a sigh of relief. Today was the last day. If he didn't succeed, then he would be obliterated, and no one would be spared. Second brother's trial was the most difficult, but I believe that you can pass it. Old San was full of confidence in Yi Chen. Most importantly, he saw Yi Chen's determination, the determination to throw himself into the jaws of death and survive. People with such determination would usually be able to escape from desperate straits. Thank you for your auspicious words. Yi Chen's heart was both apprehensive and excited. At this stage, he could no longer have any other thoughts. If he succeeded, he would live. If he failed, he would die. My name is Mo Ka. The second-ranked human rabbit walked out of the mist. He was the first to tell Yi Chen his name. Mo Ka opened his right hand, and a square space appeared. This is my space maze. There are a total of 108,000 square spaces inside, and none of them have an exit. You need to find a weak spot and break it. Remember, the space inside can move. When you can walk out, that is when you pass. Of course, if you don't come out in 64 years, then you don't need to come out. Space maze. Yi Chen couldn't help but look at the space in Mo Ka's hand. So mysterious. Yi Chen found that he couldn't see through this space. Could Mo Ka have grasped the space law? Yi Chen pursed his lips. His space profound had reached completion. Since he couldn't see through this space, it was obvious that Mo Ka had grasped the space law. Fortunately, Mo Ka's foundation was the same as his, so the space law shouldn't be too solid. There was still some hope. Let's begin. Mo Ka waved his hand, and the square space fell down. It quickly grew until it was 10 square meters wide. Creak, a door opened. Yi Chen didn't hesitate and stepped into the space. In an instant, the door behind him closed. The weak spot, found it. In the square space, Yi Chen quickly found the unstable spot. Pulling out the heaven sword, Yi Chen slashed open a thick sword mark, and his body flashed in. One space after another, a completely sealed environment. Yi Chen finally understood the difficulty of this stage. Not only did it test one's talent and comprehension in space, it also tested one's willpower. No matter how strong one's heart was, there would be a moment of collapse. Think about it, if you were placed in a narrow space, to find a way out, you would have to enter countless narrow spaces. This kind of endless, almost hopeless life could easily drive one crazy. Mo Ka had said that the space inside was moving. 108,000 spaces were constantly moving. Just thinking about it was terrifying. Soon, a year had passed, and Yi Chen had broken through 10,000 spaces. Just as he was about to break through the space wall in front of him, suddenly, Yi Chen turned his head to the side. That was also the weak spot of the space. Each space has more than one weak spot. Yi Chen's expression was a little ugly. Finding the weak spot required time. In the past, Yi Chen had always found a weak spot and directly broke through it without thinking about anything else. Now, it seemed that this method was wrong. This space had a total of 5 weak spots, and Yi Chen didn't know which one to choose. Whatever, I'll choose the weakest spot. Yi Chen made up his mind and slashed open the weakest spot. Chapter 1390. Second brother, what do you think of this kid? The human-shaped rabbit who was gnawing on a golden radish walked over. Mo Ka thought for a while and said, "I think highly of him. Although his talent and comprehension aren't the best in the past hundreds of millions of years, he is actually the best overall. Sometimes, talent and comprehension can't even compare to determination. I saw it clearly when he was trying to break through the third brother's level." After taking a bite of the golden radish, the humanoid rabbit nodded. "I think so too. He has a will and determination that he won't give up even if he dies." Over the past hundreds of millions of years, about 100 people have reached third brother's place, but only 10 have succeeded. These 10 people have spent around 20 years, with the longest being 26 years. The other 90 people have failed mainly because they couldn't withstand the pressure of death and their hearts were in chaos. Yeah, this kid's mind was also in a mess before. Fortunately, at the last moment, he borrowed the pressure of death and forcefully condensed his heart power into a single point. If he couldn't condense his heart power into a single point, or if he didn't have enough will to live, he would have died. Now, let's see if he can get out of your space maze. In 30 years, Yi Chen had broken through a total of 110,000 spaces, but he only had half of the time left. In the remaining 33 years, I can continue to break through hundreds of thousands of spaces, but can I find the exit? Yi Chen reflected. Rather than wasting time blindly looking for an exit, I might as well take a gamble. The laws were something only powerful demigods could comprehend. Yi Chen didn't expect himself to comprehend the space laws in 33 years, but he only needed to find a trace of the rules of the space laws, such as a way to leave the space maze. Everything in the world had its own rules, but the primal chaos had abandoned all rules and order. Eliminating all distracting thoughts, Yi Chen sat down and quietly observed the space in front of him. His soul power and heart power carefully scanned again and again. What the soul power saw were lines, densely packed and omnipresent, while what the heart power saw were inexplicable runes. Both had their own uses and complemented each other. 10 years passed. "Huh!" Yi Chen suddenly exclaimed in surprise. He saw a chain made of lines and symbols. This chain was rooted in the space he was in, and he didn't know where the other end was. Along the chain, Yi Chen's soul power and heart power spread out. Soon, Yi Chen saw another space through the chains, a space that was exactly the same as the one he was in. Could it be that this chain has pierced through 108,000 spaces? Yi Chen thought of a possibility. In his opinion, this possibility was most likely his only hope of leaving the space maze. Another 10 years passed. Through the chains, Yi Chen saw 68,000 spaces. He discovered that every once in a while, the chains would move. Correspondingly, the spaces that were pierced by the chains would also move. If he followed the original method, he might not be able to leave the space maze for the rest of his life unless he could grasp the laws of space and break through the space maze in one fell swoop. 72,000. 75,000. 81,000. 5 years passed, and there were only 8 years left. However, on this day, Yi Chen saw the space barrier of the space maze through the 81,000th space. As long as he could break that space barrier, he would be able to leave this place. And the 81,000th space was actually only 300 spaces away from the space he was in. The main reason was that the chains were twisting around like snakes, not in a straight line. Without further ado, Yi Chen broke through space after space, rushing over. However, rushing over required time. He had to break through the weak points of space, passing through space after space. Yi Chen had only rushed 1/10 of the way, and all the spaces had moved, messing up Yi Chen's plan. No rush. Yi Chen tried his best to regain his composure and continued to search for shortcuts. This was like playing with a Rubik's Cube. It required patience and the ability to calculate. Experiment after experiment, failure after failure. Yi Chen felt that every moment was torture. He was only 10 spaces away from the space maze's outer wall, but he still failed on the verge of success. If it was someone else, they would have vomited blood and died from anger. It had to be known that the 64-year deadline was getting closer and closer. 62nd year. Ari. Yi Chen sighed. His luck was really good this time. He was only 3 spaces away from the space maze's outer wall, just 1 step away. If only he could be a little faster. In fact, unknowingly, Yi Chen's speed of breaking through space was getting faster and faster. The Nether Saint Eye played a crucial role. The Nether Saint Eye contained the will of Hell, allowing it to see through space and time. Finding the weak points of space was much easier than using Soul Force and Heart Force. After using it countless times, unknowingly, the Nether Saint Eye was slowly growing. 63rd year passed. Yi Chen regretted that he was just a little bit away. Due to his nervousness, Yi Chen did not feel any changes in his eyes. Originally, the Nether Saint Eye had a circle of gold around its pupil, with 2 vortexes in the shape of a twin star, slowly rotating. But now, the twin star vortexes had disappeared, turning into a golden vortex. Let's try again. Yi Chen was very unwilling. Soon, he found a route. This route had more than 400 spaces. His eyes focused on the weak points of the space. What? Yi Chen was surprised to find that he had found the weak points of the space. In his eyes, the weak points were like black dots on a piece of white paper, clearly visible and very eye-catching. So the Nether Saint Eye has evolved. In that case, let's see if I can see through the entire space maze. The original Nether Saint Eye was unable to see through the entire space maze because this space maze contained the space law. The Nether Saint Eye's level was not high enough, so it could only rely on Soul Force and Heart Force to follow the space law to observe each space. I saw through it. Yi Chen's voice was trembling. The Nether Saint Eye operated to the limit, and transparent spaces appeared in Yi Chen's eyes. Even the space law chains were no exception. Gradually, Yi Chen's vision passed through the outer wall of the space maze, and he saw 2 human-shaped rabbits on the outside. Yi. The human-shaped rabbit that was gnawing on the golden radish looked at Yi Chen, and his eyes collided with Yi Chen's. Second brother, he succeeded. His voice was also trembling. After so many years, he was finally leaving this place. Although the other party's method was very cheap, so what? As long as they could pass through, it was fine. He wished that he could lower the difficulty and let these people pass through easily. Unfortunately, he could not do that. He also did not dare to disobey the desolate god's order, as a true god was omniscient to a certain extent. After a quarter of an hour, Yi Chen came out from the square space maze. Chapter 1391. After 64 years, Yi Chen seemed to have gone through all the vicissitudes of life. He felt indescribably tired, mainly because he had consumed too much of his soul force and heart force. I succeeded. Yi Chen looked at the 2 humanoid rabbits. Throwing away the golden radish in his hand, the humanoid rabbit smiled. Good, very good. In hundreds of millions of years, you are the first person to pass the test. Speaking of which, us 8 brothers should thank you. Without you, who knows how long it would have taken us to leave the desolate God-secret realm. Perhaps we would have stayed here for hundreds of millions of years. You want to leave the desolate God-secret realm? How? Yi Chen himself had to leave eventually. Of course, that would be after dealing with Empyrean Sea Fiend. As if seeing through Yi Chen's thoughts, the humanoid rabbit said, "You are an outsider, so your method of leaving is different from ours. In the desolate God-secret realm, there is an ancient transmission array. Through this ancient transmission array, you can leave the desolate God continent. This method is only useful for you outsiders. People of the desolate race are rejected by the ancient transmission array. Later, I will draw a map of the desolate God secret realm for you. Many thanks." After solving the problem of leaving, Yi Chen heaved a sigh of relief. He didn't want to stay in the desolate God continent forever. In the fog, the other 6 humanoid rabbits also walked out, each with a smile on their face. Even little 8, who wanted to kill Yi Chen, was very happy. For this, he specially apologized to Yi Chen. At that time, he didn't think that Yi Chen could pass all the tests, so he killed him. Now, he regretted it. If he had killed him, everything would have been rewritten. What surprised Yi Chen the most was the change in Sky Splitter. Sky Splitter's level had risen from elementary legend to peak legend. That terrifying fierce beast aura made even Yi Chen secretly praise it. Even the peak legend fierce beast that chased him before was only SOSO. The leading humanoid rabbit was called Rabbit Saint. He smiled. The desolate god secret realm doesn't have many things, but there are many fierce beasts. Of course, nurturing him to peak legend fierce beast is my limit. It won't be easy to become a quasi-holy beast. Devouring fierce beast flesh won't work. He can only rely on himself to evolve. A quasi-holy beast was a bottleneck. Once it became a quasi-holy beast, it would not be too difficult to become a holy beast. With the accumulation of time, it would become a holy beast one day. Skysplitter, which had become a peak legend rank dire beast, was incomparably huge. It was more than 10 meters tall and nearly 30 meters long. Its 4 limbs were like a small mountain, emitting a powerful pressure. Of course, Yi Chen would always be his master. Seeing Yi Chen, Heaven Splitter ran over and rubbed his huge head against Yi Chen, playing around with all his might. Rubbing Heaven Splitter's head, Yi Chen felt that this was truly a great opportunity. Even though it was accompanied by great danger and he had almost been killed, Yi Chen felt that this was truly a great opportunity. By the way, I've prepared a big gift for you. I hope you'll like it. The Rabbit Saint waved her right hand, and the dense fog at the side dissipated. What appeared in front of them was a simple and unadorned palace. The palace's doors creaked open, and when Yi Chen saw what was inside the palace, her eyes narrowed involuntarily. So many supreme treasures and saint treasures. The palace was not very big, and it was filled with supreme treasures and sacred treasures. Intense lights interweaved together, shining thousands of times brighter than the sun. If it were not for the fact that the doors of the palace were closed, this light would not have been hidden by the fog. The things inside belong to the people who were killed over the past hundreds of millions of years. They are useless to us, so I'll give them to you. The Rabbit Saint said generously. Give them all to me. Yi Chen was a little stunned. Of course. In the Rabbit Saint's eyes, these things were nothing. Is there anything you need me to do, Senior? Yi Chen was a little flattered to accept such a big gift for no reason. You have already helped us greatly. Without you, we would have to stay in the desolate god's secret realm for countless years. Compared to this, these things that are useless to us are nothing. In the end, Yi Chen accepted this big gift. Among this big gift, the most precious were the supreme treasures and the sacred sword, because only these 2 things could improve his immortal sword physique. Otherwise, he did not know how long it would take to improve his immortal sword physique to level 13 or 14. After Yi Chen put away all the supreme treasures and saint treasures in the palace, the Rabbit Saint had already created a map of the desolate god's secret realm. Here. The Rabbit Saint tossed the map to Yi Chen. All right, we're leaving. The Rabbit Saint glanced at the valley where the fog had dissipated, and a hint of reluctance appeared in her eyes. Although she had wanted to leave this place countless times, she was still a little reluctant to leave. Yi Chen, see you again. The Rabbit Saint crushed a token in her hand. In the next moment, endless desolate god laws and desolate god willpower came over, forming a cocoon of light that enveloped the 8 brothers. Whoosh, the cocoon of light broke through the void and disappeared without a trace. Thank you. Yi Chen thought to himself. After counting the supreme treasures and saint treasures, Yi Chen inhaled sharply again. This big gift from the Rabbit Saint was really too big. After counting, there were more than 3,000 saint treasures. There were sabers, spears, swords, staffs, armors, inner armors, and more than 90% of them were Earth Saint treasures. There were more than 3,000 of them, and there were only a dozen or so Sky Saint treasures. It was clear how rare Sky Saint treasures were. In hundreds of millions of years, there were only a dozen or so. There were even more supreme treasures, more than 10,000 of them. There was not a single level 1 supreme treasures among them, and all of them were level 3 and above. Of course, Yi Chen valued the supreme treasures and the sacred swords more. There were 820 supreme treasures and 311 sacred swords. Among them, there were 310 Earth Saint treasures and only 1 Sky Saint treasures. Moreover, it was not a 1-star Sky Saint treasure, but a 3-star Sky Saint treasure. It was more than 100 times stronger than the 9-star Earth Saint Treasure Heaven sword in his hand. Just by holding it in his hand, Yi Chen could feel the vast sword qi about to surge out and destroy everything in front of him. This sacred sword was called the Firmament Sword. This sword will be my trump card in the future. With the Firmament Sword, Yi Chen's strength would soar again. However, he still planned to use the Heaven Sword normally. After all, the Heaven Sword had been with him for a long time. With his current strength, he probably did not need the Firmament Sword. The Heaven Sword was enough. There were a total of 13 Sky Saint treasures. Other than the Firmament Sword, there were 8 offensive sacred treasures and 4 defensive sacred treasures. The best defensive sacred treasure was also a 3-star Sky Saint treasure called the Black Tortoise Sacred Armor. There was the Firmament Sword for his weapon and the Black Tortoise Sacred Armor for his armor. For the first time, Yi Chen had a feeling that it was unreal. These things came too easily. However, on the other hand, if someone else passed the test, they would also get this big gift. It was just that Yi Chen was luckier and became the first person to eat crabs. With so many supreme treasures, it should be enough to push my immortal sword body to the 14th level. Yi Chen was not in a hurry to leave the desolate god secret territory. He planned to improve his immortal sword body. After all, although there was no one in the desolate god continent who could threaten him, there were still many unknown dangers in the desolate god secret territory. He would not naively think that he was already invincible in the desolate god secret territory. Not to mention other things, there were demigod-level beasts in the desolate god secret territory, which were also sacred beasts. Chapter 1392. Every level of the immortal sword body was harder to reach. From the 10th to the 11th level, one needed to absorb the essence of one supreme sword. From the 11th to the 12th level, one needed to absorb the essence of 10 supreme swords. From the 12th to the 13th level, one needed to absorb the essence of at least 100 rank 1 or 2 supreme swords. If it wasn't for this great gift, Yi Chen wouldn't have been able to reach the 13th level, let alone the 14th. All the supreme swords I have here are rank 3 or above. I wonder how many sword essences I need to absorb to level up. Getting rid of distracting thoughts, Yi Chen started to cultivate the immortal sword body. Sky Splitter was guarding not far away. If any fierce beasts attacked, it would tear them apart at all costs. Clang! The ground was filled with supreme swords. When Yi Chen activated the immortal sword body, the 20 rank 3 supreme swords closest to Yi Chen started to tremble. In the next moment, 20 sword phantoms flew out and entered Yi Chen's body. Visible to the naked eye, Yi Chen's body had an additional sword pattern, increasing from 12 to 13 sword patterns. The 13th level is done. Yi Chen spat out a mouthful of sharp impure air. This was the impure air contained within the sword essences. The higher the level of the immortal sword body, the more demanding its appetite would be. What used to be a part of the essence might not be the essence anymore. The 13th level of the immortal sword body was enough to block an attack from a mid-level legendary sovereign, but it wasn't enough. As his strength increased by leaps and bounds, Yi Chen's sights were set higher and higher. The immortal sword body continued to operate, and one sword phantom after another entered Yi Chen's body. 50. 100. 200. After absorbing the essence of 200 rank 3 supreme swords, Yi Chen's immortal sword body reached the 14th level, and another sword pattern appeared on his body. What a powerful feeling! After reaching the 14th level of the immortal sword body, Yi Chen felt that his every move was filled with boundless power. It should be known that the physical strength of the majority of legendary supremes was already very good if they could withstand the attacks of super supremes, but Yi Chen could withstand the attacks of high-level legendary supremes even without the protection of a sacred artifact armor. Once his body's defense was strong, he would be able to wear down enemies who were on par with him to death. At any rate, even if the other party was wearing a sacred artifact armor, they would not be able to completely block off the attacks. Otherwise, they would still receive some damage from the shockwaves. As time went on, they would be incapable of enduring it. Let's see what the limit is. Yi Chen was very clear that his immortal sword body couldn't be improved endlessly. He could only improve it now because he had a sufficient foundation. Once his foundation was exhausted, it would be useless no matter how many supreme treasured swords he had. He wouldn't be able to absorb them. 100. 200. Very quickly, the third-grade sovereign swords were all used up. What was left were fourth-grade and fifth-grade sovereign swords. There were fewer fifth-grade sovereign swords, only about 30 of them. After absorbing the essence of more than 200 rank 3 supreme swords and 300 rank 4 supreme swords, Yi Chen's body shook, and a new sword pattern appeared on Yi Chen's body. The 15th level of the Immortal Sword Body. When he created the Immortal Sword Body, he had never thought that he would have such an achievement today. At that time, he only wanted to create a sword body that could strengthen his defense. But, who would have thought that he would accidentally create a strange sword body art like the Immortal Sword Body? Judging from the conditions, the Immortal Sword Body was obviously inferior to the 9 transformation Golden Body. After all, the conditions were too harsh. How could there be so many supreme sword essences for one to absorb? Moreover, the higher the level, the more terrifying the supreme sword essences would be. It was simply a fantasy. However, in the long run, the Immortal Sword Body surpassed the 9 transformation Golden Body by many levels. The 9 transformation Golden Body was the limit of the 9 transformation Golden Body, and it was extremely difficult to cultivate. In comparison, the Immortal Sword Body was much easier to cultivate. Of course, the prerequisite was that one had to have the Immortal Sword intent. Otherwise, it would be useless. The 15th level of the Immortal Sword Body was enough to resist a peak legendary supremacy's attack. Coupled with the Black Tortoise sacred armor, Yi Chen estimated that even a demigod wouldn't be able to hurt him. As for whether the weakest demigod could hurt him, Yi Chen wasn't sure. Up until now, he still didn't know how strong and terrifying a demigod was. Even so, Yi Chen was still very confident in the Immortal Sword Body. In his opinion, he still needed to be careful even if he was strong. If 2 enemies of similar strength surrounded him, he would have to escape. However, with such a strong defense, he wouldn't need to be afraid of 10 enemies of similar strength. He could just kill them until they were afraid. The 15th level is the limit. Next, Yi Chen planned to break through the Immortal Sword Body, but he failed. The 15th level was his limit unless the Immortal Sword intent could break through to the 9th level. Heaven Splitter, let's go back. Standing up, Yi Chen jumped onto Heaven Splitter's back and patted him. Hearing this, Heaven Splitter lowered his body. The next moment, his hind legs exerted force, and his huge body shot out like a sharp arrow. His speed was much faster than before. The desolate god's secret domain was extremely vast, and there were many treasures here. However, these treasures were usually guarded by fierce beasts. Before coming here, Yi Chen didn't have any extravagant hopes. He only wanted to survive. But now that his strength had increased, he had many ideas. My origin is damaged, and my cultivation is less than 30% of my usual strength. I need to find some treasures to recover. His recovery was too slow, and Yi Chen didn't have that much time to waste on it. A few days later, Yi Chen found a small tree with 3 fist-sized fruits growing on it. They were red, yellow, and blue respectively. This was the famous legendary spirit fruit, the tricolored fruit. The red fruit could replenish the essence and blood, the yellow one could replenish the Zhen Yuan, and the blue one could replenish the soul. Together, they were the essence, qi, and spirit sources. The fierce beast guarding the tricolored fruit was no match for Heaven Splitter, so it was quickly chased away. After swallowing the 3 spirit fruits, Yi Chen felt that his origin had recovered to about 50%. His martial Dao Yuan spirit gradually brightened, no longer as dim as before. Fortunately, this was the desolate god continent, the desolate god secret domain. If it was in the outside world, a legendary spirit fruit like the tricolored fruit could only be found in books. Of course, it should also be found in the heavenly river. He wasn't in a hurry to leave the desolate god secret domain. Since more than 100 years had passed, he wasn't in a hurry to leave for another year or so. It was unknown whether Yi Chen's luck was good or bad, but when Yi Chen's origin had recovered to 70%, Yi Chen encountered the baboon fierce beast, Tifula. Roar. Without waiting for his master to make the first move, Heaven Splitter rushed forward. Now that he was a peak legendary fierce beast, he didn't fear Tifula like before. In a situation where the difference in strength wasn't too big, the Star Beardog King would never shy away from a battle. The two gigantic beasts tore at each other rapidly, their roars rising and falling like thunder. Woo-woo, it was obvious that Heaven Splitter wasn't Tifula's match. He was sent flying by the other party's claw, and blood splattered. After all, even the peak legendary fierce beast, the gold-eating beast, would tremble when it encountered Tifula. Heaven Splitter's strength seemed to be slightly weaker than the gold-eating beast. It only dared to fight because its master was backing it up. We meet again. Yi Chen's figure flashed and blocked Tifula, who was about to rush forward to tear Heaven Splitter apart. Tifula didn't take Yi Chen seriously at all and slapped him with its claw. Clang! The sound of metal clashing resounded. Yi Chen was unscathed, but the powerful force made him slide hundreds of meters away, leaving a deep mark on the ground. What a powerful force! Yi Chen was surprised. This Tifula wasn't an ordinary peak legendary fierce beast, but one of the top legendary fierce beasts in the history of the Desolate God Continent. Although the gold-eating beast was strong, it could only be ranked in the top 20 in the history of the Desolate God Continent. Compared to Tifula, it was a far cry. Take my destruction sword attack as well. Yi Chen jumped up and took out his heaven sword. The sword light stabbed out violently. Pooh! Tifula couldn't dodge in time, and blood appeared on its chest. Its defense had been pierced through by the destruction sword. Right now, Yi Chen didn't even have a clear idea of what level his power had reached. Not to mention other things, after more than 100 years, with the 3 peak rank 8 sword spirits resonating, his sword intent alone had increased by more than 100 times. Of course, this little wound was probably not much different from being stared at by a mosquito for Tifula. Tifula was furious, and his eyes were getting redder and redder. Before, when he fought with Sky Splitter and slapped Yi Chen, they were just casual attacks. He didn't think that he needed to use his full power. The enraged Tiefu La displayed all of his strength as he charged toward Yi Chen with a brutal aura. Yi Chen didn't dare to be careless. His green lotus sword realm suddenly exploded, covering Tifula. At the same time, Yi Chen performed his most powerful sword movement, the heavy sword movement, and slashed toward Tifula. Boom! Tifula and Yi Chen were blown away at the same time. No wonder it is one of the top legendary fierce beasts in the history of the Desolate God Continent. Yi Chen praised in his mind. He had already tried his best, but his power was only on par with Tifula's. Chapter 1393. Rumble. The battle was still going on. Within a radius of thousands of miles, sand and stones were flying everywhere. The man and the beast were moving at a very fast speed. From time to time, they would collide with each other. Every time they collided, it would be like an earthquake, and shockwaves would radiate in all directions. After fighting for hundreds of rounds, Tifula let out a strange cry and suddenly spat out a bloody light from its mouth. This bloody light was its trump card, and it would not be used easily. For a peak legendary fierce beast with an extremely strong defense like the gold-eating beast, as long as it was sprayed by the bloody light, it would not be able to withstand it. Wherever it was sprayed, that place would be melted. The thick sword light flew towards the blood-red light. With a puff sound, half of the blood-red light was cut off, and the remaining half was still rushing towards Yi Chen. However, Yi Chen was already prepared for this. He used the third move of the 5-element sword art, the defensive sword style. The sword light protected him completely. Although the blood-red light was ferocious, it was quickly weakened by the layers of sword light. Just as Yi Chen was about to launch a fierce counterattack, a beam of black and white light shot over from afar. This beam of light was extremely fast, as if it could pierce through the void. In an instant, it arrived in front of Yi Chen. At this moment, Yi Chen was in a situation where he had already used up all his previous strength but had yet to recover, so he had no time to dodge or resist. He was hit by the beam of black and white light, and his entire body was sent flying. Finally, he sank deep into a mountain. The ground trembled as a huge creature rushed over. It looked like a Tyrannosaurus rex, but it had 2 heads, a dragon's head and a snake's head. It was one of the most powerful legendary beasts in the history of the wild's god continent, the Gemini Tyrannosaurus. Roar. Hiss. The 2 heads of the Gemini Tyrannosaurus produced different sounds. One was the roar of a dragon, while the other was the sound of a snake sticking out its tongue. One was hard, while the other was soft. It was extremely uncomfortable to listen to. Sky Splitter was a little restless. They were both pinnacle legendary fierce beasts, but it was still a far cry from Typhler's Gemini Tyrannosaurus. As a newly advanced pinnacle legendary fierce beast, it had some strength, but its foundation hadn't stabilized yet. It couldn't compare to Typhler's tyrannical ferocity, let alone the Gemini Tyrannosaurus aura. Boom! Rubble flew everywhere as Yi Chen dashed out from inside the mountain. Gemini Tyrannosaurus. Yi Chen noticed the Gemini Tyrannosaurus immediately. If it had been in the past, Yi Chen would have run as far as he could when he encountered Typhler and the Gemini Tyrannosaurus in the past. As for whether he could escape or not, that was another matter. However, the wheel of fortune changed. This time, he should not be the one running away. I advise you two not to provoke me. Yi Chen was unscathed as he spoke to Typhler and Gemini Tyrannosaurus. Roar. Roar. Hiss. Both of them were peerless vicious beasts, so how could they listen to Yi Chen's words? One on the left and one on the right, they charged at Yi Chen, as if they would not stop until they tore Yi Chen into 1,000 pieces. You asked for it. Sheathing the heavenly sword, Yi Chen took out a simple and unadorned long sword. Clang, as the sword was unsheathed, a vast and boundless sword chi swept out, and the high ground within a radius of several hundred miles was instantly cut down. Scram! As if swatting flies, Yi Chen swept his sword toward Typhler and the Gemini Tyrannosaurus. Blood splattered, and the 2 peerless legendary vicious beasts were sent flying. Under the 3-star divine weapon, the firmament sword, they were so powerful that they could not withstand a single blow. You two go, I don't want to kill you. Given some time, Yi Chen had the chance to kill the 2, but it was meaningless for him. Skysplitter had already advanced to the peak of legendary vicious beast and could not rely on devouring vicious beast flesh to evolve. Moreover, even if he wanted to devour vicious beast flesh, he would at least have to devour the flesh of quasi-holy beasts. With Yi Chen's strength, there was no way for him to challenge quasi-holy beasts. Of course, with the Xianwu sacred armor and the firmament sword, Yi Chen was not afraid of ordinary quasi-holy beasts. Another 2 months passed, and Yi Chen found a rare origin grass. Not only did his martial path Yuan Shen recover to its original state, but it had also improved a lot. It had reached the peak of silver primary level and was only 1 step away from silver intermediate level. It's time to go out. More than 100 years had passed, and Yi Chen did not know what changes had happened to the wild's god continent. In his opinion, Sea Fiend Empyrean was not a good person, so it was necessary to go back. In the center of the wild's god continent, a giant city had appeared. The city walls were hundreds of meters tall and were iron black in color. Looking down, one could see that the entire city was divided into 2 parts, one left and one right. In the center of the left part was a black palace, and in the center of the right part was a silver-gray palace. The black palace was the Sea Fiend Palace, and the silver-gray palace was the Evil Light Palace. At a rough glance, there were at least 5 million families in the city. Based on the calculation of 3 people in each family, the city had a total population of 15 million, which was far more than the population of a rank 8 tribe. It should be known that a rank 8 tribe only had 200,000 to 500,000 families, which was less than 1.5 million people. In more than 100 years, Empyrean Sea Fiend and Empyrean Evil Light had joined forces to unify the entire Wild's God continent, creating the only 9th grade tribe, the Demon Light Tribe. The Demon Light Tribe was a combination of the two's titles, and 90% of the Demon Light Tribe's population came from the 13 8th grade tribes. As for the 7th grade tribes, they were directly ignored. They did not plan on gathering all the desolate race people in the Demon Light Tribe. It was fine as long as the 8th grade tribes fell under their control. Kang Siwei, what do you think? As long as you hand over the Redbud Flower battle armor, I can guarantee your daughter's safety. Sea Demon Palace, Empyrean Sea Fiend looked down at Kang Siwei. A trace of anger and disdain appeared on Kang Siwei's face. The mighty Empyrean Sea Fiend actually resorted to such underhanded methods. Don't you think it's shameless? Those who achieve great things don't bother with trifles. This is all your fault. If you don't reflect on yourself, I can't guarantee that nothing will happen to your daughter. Empyrean Sea Fiend was expressionless. Hearing this, Kang Siwei's face darkened. Among the 13 8th grade tribes, the first to join the Demon Light tribe were the other 8 great 8th grade tribes. The Redbud Flower battle armor and the other 4 great tribes joined later. After all, if they didn't join, they would be attacked by the other side. Although the 5 of them could barely protect themselves, the others couldn't. This was something they had no other choice. Who knew that after joining the Demon Light tribe, Empyrean Sea Fiend and Empyrean Evil Light would begin to think of ways to obtain the Heavenly Saint artifacts of the 5 great tribes. After a series of actions, besides Kang Siwei, the other 4's Heavenly Saint artifacts had all been taken away. Once they lost their Heavenly Saint artifacts, the 5 of them would be no match for Empyrean Sea Fiend and Empyrean Evil Light. Kang Siwei was the strongest among the 5 great tribe leaders. With the Redbud Flower battle armor, she was very domineering. She had always been unwilling to hand over the Redbud Flower battle armor. She knew very well that once she handed over the Redbud Flower battle armor, even Empyrean Sea Fiend and Empyrean Evil Light couldn't do anything to her. They simply couldn't hurt Kang Siwei through the Redbud Flower battle armor. After all, apart from their 9th domain, their strength was about the same as Kang Siwei's, or even slightly worse. Who would have thought that Empyrean Sea Fiend would secretly capture Kang Siwei's daughter, Kang Xueli, to threaten her? Chapter 1394. In just over 100 years, they actually managed to unify the desolate god continent and establish the only 9th level tribe, the Demon Light tribe. And besides Empyrean Sea Demon, there is also another peak legend rank supreme, Empyrean Nefarious Light. 10,000 miles away from the Demon Light tribe, a young man riding a giant vicious beast was rushing over. After asking around, Yi Chen learned just what had happened in the desolate god continent in the last 100 years. With a sneer, Yi Chen looked towards the Demon Light tribe, thinking, how ironic. The only 9th level tribe was actually destroyed by me. Something's wrong. Suddenly, Yi Chen seemed to think of something. Could it be that all of this was guided by the will of the desolate god? The desolate god continent was the world of the desolate race, and outsiders were ultimately outsiders. If one wanted to dominate the desolate god continent, it was impossible for there to be no consequences. Perhaps the will of the desolate god wanted to use him to destroy the only 9th level tribe and return the desolate god continent to its original state. As for him being able to enter the mountain valley and accept the test, it might have been guided by the will of the desolate god. In short, the will of the desolate god covered the entire desolate god continent. It could affect the destiny of countless people. Before outsiders arrived, it would treat them all equally. But once outsiders arrived, it would favor the desolate race. What if I immediately change my mind and don't deal with Empyrean Sea Demon? Yi Chen couldn't help but think. It's best not to have such thoughts. A mortal cannot measure the will of a true god, nor do they need to measure it. The consequences are not something I can bear. Soon, Yi Chen dispelled this idea. He didn't want to challenge fate. Without absolute strength, wanting to defy the heavens would only result in him being abandoned by fate and becoming a pitiful worm. Soon, the Demon Light tribe appeared in front of him. Kang Siwei, my patience is limited. Before you leave Sea Demon Palace, you must make a decision. Do you want to hand it over or not? In truth, Empyrean Sea Demon didn't need the Borhinia battle armor. With his current status, if he had enough time, he could create a second set of Heavenly Saint artifact armor. He just didn't want the Borhinia battle armor to fall into the hands of others. What he needed was absolute control. Once he gave an order, no one would dare disobey. Kang Siwei was about to say something. Bang! With a loud explosion, the entire Demon Light tribe shook. Within the palace of Sea Demon Palace, dust began to fall down, filling the air. Who is it? Exalted celestial venerable Sea Demon was enraged. His figure flashed as he flew out of the Sea Demon Palace. At the same time, Evil Light Hall's heavenly sovereign Evil Light also came out. What happened? Kang Siwei followed him out with a puzzled expression. Kang Siwei. Above the Demon Light tribe, Ying Liexiong, Yun Piaomiao, and the other two gathered from 4 different directions. After the 4 of them had their Ascended Saint artifacts taken away, their status was not as good as before. Fortunately, they were very sensible and did not resist too much. Otherwise, they might not even be able to see them now. It seems like someone is attacking the Demon Light tribe's array formation outside, Kang Siwei said. Let's go out and take a look. The 5 of them were very curious, but at the same time, they also had a trace of hope. When the 5 of them arrived at the Demon Light tribe's gate, the entire gate was already crowded with people. As far as the eye could see, 10 miles away, a man and a beast were standing side by side. The beast was the king of the Space Bear Hounds. The terrifying aura emitted from its body shocked everyone. This kind of aura was clearly the aura of a peak legendary beast. There was no mistake. Beside the king of the Space Bear Hounds was a young man in blue clothes. He had 2 swords on his waist. His long black hair fluttered in the wind like ink. His eyes were like 2 beams of sword light, staring at Empyrean Haimo and Empyrean Xieguang. It's Yi Chen. Ying Liexiong was shocked. It really is him. Kang Siwei and the others also recognized this person. It's good that he didn't die, but why did he come back? A peak legend rank beast alone shouldn't be able to do anything to Empyrean Sea Demon and Empyrean Nefarious Light. Over 100 years had passed, and they all thought that Yi Chen had died long ago. They never imagined that not only had he returned unscathed, but the Star Bear King that had followed him had also evolved into a peak legend rank beast. Unfortunately, Empyrean Sea Demon and Empyrean Nefarious Light were simply too powerful. In truth, the 2 of them were about the same as the 5 of them, but their 9th layer domain was their trump card. Inside the 9th layer domain, the 5 of them couldn't even display 1% of their strength. Only Kang Siwei could resist. Yi Chen. Lan Yu, who had just arrived, cried with joy. Yi Chen's figure had already been engraved in her heart at some unknown time. The first demon commander and evil star had complicated expressions, especially the first demon commander. He longed to kill Yi Chen himself, but he didn't want others to do it for him. Yi Chen's return made him feel relieved, but at the same time, a premonition appeared in his heart. This premonition made him feel uneasy. Maybe I'm overthinking things, the first demon commander thought. Boy, you dare to come back. Empyrean Sea Demon was furious. Even the desolate god mystic domain couldn't stop this boy. In Empyrean Sea Demon's opinion, Yi Chen's life was simply unimaginable. Today is the day I return. Today will be the day you die. After fighting with the Tefla Gemini Tyrannosaurus, Yi Chen had a rough idea of his strength. When using the Sky Sword, his strength was about the same as Tefla's. He was a peak existence among the peak legend rank supremes, and above that would be the quasi-demigod rank. Once he used the Firmament Sword, his strength would undoubtedly reach the quasi-demigod rank. What a joke. Do you really think that you can rely on a mere pinnacle legendary ferocious beast? Empyrean Sea Demon sneered disdainfully. He didn't know what Yi Chen was relying on, but since the other party had delivered himself to his doorstep, he definitely wouldn't let him escape again. Empyrean Evil Light, I will deal with this boy. You hold the line and don't give him a chance to escape. Yi Chen's spacetime profound made Empyrean Sea Demon not 100% sure that he could stop him. However, with Empyrean Evil Light by his side, even if the other party's spacetime profound had reached perfection, he wouldn't be able to escape. No problem. Empyrean Evil Light nodded. As he spoke, he glanced at Yi Chen with a bit of pity. It wasn't a good thing for the demons to dominate the evil spirit race. However, this was the desolate god continent. Whether or not they could leave was still a problem. He wouldn't think too far into the future. If there was someone to blame, They could only blame themselves for coming to their doorstep and seeking death. There is a path to heaven but you don't want to take it. There is no door to hell but you insist on coming. Prepare to die. Empyrean sea demon shouted. A vast and mighty sea demon domain radiated outwards, instantly covering a radius of several hundred miles. Under the suppression of the sea demon domain, Skysplit felt a bit uncomfortable. His limbs trembled and he couldn't help but roar. Compared to the burning heat domain, it's too lacking. Yi Chen reached out and grabbed a strand of the sea demon domain's water domain, shaking his head. You should also experience my 9th layer sword domain. Bang! The void trembled. An incomparably massive 5-colored lotus bloomed with Yi Chen at the center. Empyrean sea demon's sea demon domain was vast and mighty, like an endless wave. But under the pressure of the 5-colored lotus, the sea demon domain was forced backwards, as if it had crashed into a giant ancient mountain, breaking apart and bleeding profusely. How is this possible? Everyone cried out in alarm. Empyrean sea demon was the most shocked. Then, he flew into a rage out of humiliation. His sea demon domain was actually not a match for Lin Ming's sword domain. This was simply a fantasy story. What he couldn't accept was that after being forced into the desolate god-mystic realm, not only did Lin Ming not die, but his sword domain had also broken through to the 9th layer. Break for me. Empyrean sea demon's face flushed red. He pushed his sea demon domain to the limit, turning it into a monstrous wave that crashed into the 5-colored lotus. At their level, the first thing to compare was their domain. If their domain couldn't compare to their opponents, then their strength would be suppressed. Although he didn't think that Yi Chen was that strong, he didn't admit that his sea demon domain was inferior to his sword domain. A mantis blocking a chariot. Yi Chen sneered. The 5-colored lotus grew stronger and stronger, like an ancient lotus that grew in the chaos, turning everything into nourishment. As the monstrous waves rushed over, they were swatted back by the lotus leaves. The 5-colored lotus grew larger and larger, resisting the endless waves as it pressed down on Empyrean sea demon. A domain required energy to maintain. The sea demon domain's energy was Empyrean sea demon's demonic power, while the green lotus sword domain's energy was sword essence, which was more suitable for the green lotus sword domain. If it weren't for Lin Ming's martial Dao Yuan spirit being strong enough and his demonic power strong enough, he would have long been crushed by the green lotus sword domain. The confrontation between the two domains left everyone dumbfounded, including the former leaders of the 5 tribes, Kang Siwei and the others. They were limited by the fact that their domains weren't strong enough. Otherwise, how could Empyrean sea demon and Empyrean nefarious light suppress them? Now, seeing Yi Chen's sword domain reach the 9th layer, and even surpassing Empyrean sea demon domain, they couldn't help but sigh. Time was indeed the greatest change. After 100 years, a former genius had already surpassed them. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.